Chapter 1105. After receiving Xiao Yan, Lin Feng looked at the people in the Taishu temple from afar. His expression was the same as usual. The king of the underworld still managed to escape. I am also very regretful. However, at least we have gained something. Yan Nanlai's expression gradually regained its calmness. He said in a deep voice, his injuries are different from those evil spirits that were refined by his life and death nether Dao fruit. His injuries require an extremely long time to recover. Xia Huang's release also greatly damaged his strength. Cutting off his connection with the netherworld sea also halts his recovery process. Of course, this is gratifying. However, his third disciple, the netherworld Taoist, is still alive and can control the power of the netherworld sea. It is not impossible for the king of the underworld to make a comeback. However, after this incident, the king of the underworld will definitely be more careful. Yan Nanlai looked at the calamity of the netherworld sea that was wreaking havoc in the surroundings. If he reactivates the ritual, then as long as we occupy the netherworld sea, we will not allow him to act rashly. However, if he bears it silently and does not reactivate the ritual, then it will be extremely difficult to find any traces of him. Lin Feng's gaze circled between Xiao Yan and Wu Mingqi. He said calmly, in the battle of the netherworld sea, our two sects will rely on their own abilities. If the king of the underworld appears, my disciple and I will still deal with him first. Yan Nanlai was silent for a while, then nodded. If there are traces of the king of the underworld, my temple will definitely kill him first. Dao Master Qingyi looked at Lin Feng and suddenly asked, in the battle just now, it seems that this is not the only thing you have gained. Lin Feng smiled slightly. That's right. After saying this, he opened his palm, and a few rays of black light floated up. Then, with his other hand, he formed a hand seal. Clouds of purple gas wrapped around the black light. Both sides continuously twisted and deformed, gradually revealing an image. It was a seemingly peaceful world. From the outside, there seemed to be nothing special about it. However, this was an indication made by Lin Feng using the aura of the king of the underworld that he had intercepted. Everyone present knew that this was a hiding place for the king of the underworld and the underworld hall. The king of the underworld must have prepared many similar places. However, this medium-class world was definitely the place where the king of the underworld had once stayed. It was an extremely important place. Feng's magic once again. Through the yin-yang Feng's life, and through the yin-yang formation, the image of the life, the king life formed. The underworld. As Yan Nanlai's eyes flashed, a similar image of the life, death, and light appeared. He already knew the location of the king of the underworld's resting place. He nodded. Although the king of the underworld most likely won't go there, and the underworld hall cultivators in that medium-class world will immediately retreat after receiving the news, we will immediately attack this place. If we find anything, we can also use those underworld hall cultivators to track them. Lin Feng said, our sect will immediately take action. Your sect can do as you please. Without the king of the underworld's urging, Xiao Yan and Wu Mingqi were working hard. Although the violent netherworld sea was still filled with calamities and tribulations, it was no longer as frightening as before. Lin Feng glanced at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan took out the evil radiant overlord sword. Red light surged in his eyes again. The place where everyone stood gradually broke through the void. However, they didn't face any calamities and tribulations. Instead, they led Xianmen Tianzong and the others back to the place where Wen Qiyang used to live, the most primitive netherworld sea realm. Heaven's Bane and the netherworld sea merged. The red chaotic void created by them collapsed this time, but as time passed, it would reform again. At that time, it would be another opportunity to subdue Heaven's Bane and the netherworld sea. Before that, they needed to plan and prepare carefully. When the time came, they would be successful. The Taishu temple watched as Lin Feng and his disciple gradually disappeared in the netherworld sea. For a time, their hearts were filled with complicated feelings. Yan Nanlai, Dao Master Qingyi, Wu Mingqi, and Dao Master Qingning all had words in their throats, but in the end, they all remained silent. Wu Mengqi's eyes flickered. Slowly, he closed his eyes. As his hands moved, he also broke through the void. He led everyone back to the Netherworld Sea realm they had entered. After escaping from the invasion of the Netherworld Sea, although there were still many calamities that rushed over through the power of the realm, the impact on Yan Nanlai and the others was not as great. The group of Taishu temple leaders looked at each other. Thinking of all the things they had just experienced and heard, the four of them all had complicated feelings. However, they quickly calmed their minds. Dao Master Qing Ning said in a low voice, "From the looks of it, compared to our temple and the king of the underworld's faction, Xianmen Tianzong has the upper hand in the fight for control of the Netherworld Sea. It's a pity that Uncle Master Tai and the others can't come in. Otherwise, the final result would be different." Wu Mengqi shook his head. Uncle Master Tai and Uncle Master Zhengyi are trying to open the spiritual sea in advance. They are at a critical moment and can't leave. Someone must stay on White Cloud Mountain, and Uncle Master Xian Yi can't leave either. Uncle Master Qing Yi is already at his limit. The master of the celestial sect really knows how to pick a time to propose marriage to Xiao Yan in the ancient immortals world. No one could have predicted that the king of the underworld's faction would give themselves away so easily. Dao Master Qing Yi said lightly, "The final ownership of the Netherworld Sea is still unknown. If the spiritual sea can be opened again, it will be under our complete control. It will be better than the Netherworld Sea." Dao Master Qing Ning hesitated for a moment and said, "Now is the best time to carry out the original plan. However, Uncle Master Tai and Uncle Master Zhengyi are still busy. Our temple is not ready yet. Whether we succeed or not, there will be huge waves in the future. We can't control the situation." Dao Master Qing Yi pondered for a moment and then said, "Get ready. If senior brother Tai and the others can finish in time, then we might as well start. If they can't, then don't act rashly." Yan Nanlai nodded and said, "Since our temple is well prepared, the sooner we start, the better. The longer we delay, the worse the situation in Infinite Wasteland will be. The king of the underworld is also in the same situation. Although we let him go this time, he shouldn't be able to cause trouble in a short time. If we delay too long, he will come back from the ashes and recover." Wu Mengqi and Dao Master Qing Ning also nodded and said, "That's right." In the original Netherworld Sea realm where Wen Qiang lived, Lin Feng was also thinking, Taishu Temple seems to be holding back. What for? He shook his head gently and looked at Xiao Yan. "Xiao Yan, I'll leave this place to you for the time being. Xiao Yi, you return to the vast thousand worlds and find trouble with the underworld hall with Xiao Lin. With the Permitha Bridge, you should be safe. If we find traces of the king of the underworld and Taoist Yu Ming, I will go there. However, Taoist Yu Ming's fate is probably worrying. But even if Shintizhe takes advantage of him, you and Xiao Lin can deal with him together." As Lin Feng said this, he chuckled and said, "Like his master and grandmaster, he is very tolerant and ambitious, but he has a sense of propriety. After plotting against Taoist Yu Ming, he did not show up again. He knows that the situation here in Tianyi is not something he can participate in. Now, he is probably hiding in a corner quietly like the king of the underworld, waiting for our sect and Taishu Temple to confront each other. He will not take the initiative to jump out. But if you can find him, make him stay. He plotted against Taoist Yu Ming, so the power that Taoist Yu Ming used to control the Netherworld Sea is likely to fall into his hands. This will help Xiao Yan control the Netherworld Sea." Lin Feng smiled coldly and said, "You use my disciple as a tool. Do you think it's so easy to let it go?" Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi bowed together and said, "Yes, Master, I understand." Lin Feng then looked at Li Yuanfang and Yang Qing and said, "Chasing after the underworld hall is also a training. Take the younger generation disciples and go with Xiao Yi." These words were mainly meant for Yang Qing. Yang Qing nodded and said, "Disciple obeys." Most of the cultivators of the underworld hall are extremely vicious and evil. They act recklessly and kill many people out of nowhere. They view human lives as worthless. Now that we have the opportunity to exterminate them, it is a good thing. Xiao Yan opened the way, and Lin Feng led the group out of the Netherworld Sea realm. They returned to the foreign space where they had first followed Shintaze into the Netherworld Sea. Gu Jun, Xiao Zhen, and her father, Wang Lin, and Lin Daohan from Taishu Temple were all waiting there. Lin Feng looked at Lin Daohan and nodded slightly. Your master and the others from your sect will come out later. Then, he looked at Gu Jun and said, Fellow Gu, sorry to keep you waiting. Gu Jun shook his head and said, Sect leader Lin, you are too polite. What did you gain from this trip to the Netherworld Sea? Lin Feng explained briefly, focusing on the king of the underworld. Gu Jun was also surprised after hearing this. This is really unexpected. Our sect will be chasing after the underworld hall cultivators. Fellow Gu and your people can do as they please. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Zhen, and smiled. Xiao Yan will stay in the Netherworld Sea for the time being. If you want, you can go and see him. Xiao Zhen, blushed slightly. Thank you, Senior Lin. Gu Jun did not say anything. After thinking for a while, he said, I will return to the ancient longevity world to make some preparations. My clan will also participate in this pursuit. Lin Feng smiled and said, Of course. At this time, Yan Nanlai, Dao Master Qing Yi, and Dao Master Qing Ning also came out of the Netherworld Sea. They looked at Lin Feng silently and greeted Gu Jun. Then, they called Lin Daohan and left together. Wang Lin greeted Lin Feng. After listening to Lin Feng's arrangements, his eyes flashed and he nodded calmly. Disciple will obey master's orders. After saying this, he, Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Yang Qing, and the others bowed to Lin Feng and left together. Lin Feng had also handed the phantom formed by the black light and purple gas to them. After Lin Feng bid farewell to Gu Jun returned to the ancient longevity world. Xiao Zhen, was sent into the Netherworld Sea by Lin Feng's magic power. She was received by Xiao Yan and entered the Netherworld Sea. Next, Lin Feng also left this foreign space and returned to the vast thousand world. In the process of traveling through the void, Lin Feng suddenly had a thought. Taishu Temple held back this time in the Netherworld Sea. Could it be? With a thought, Lin Feng communicated with Mount Penglai in the Ying Sea. In the hall of the mountain, a tall light figure moved slightly. It opened its eyes and looked at the heavenly scarlet golden pearl in front of it. In the heavenly scarlet golden pearl, the divine soul of Zenith Heaven also opened its eyes. Master Lin. The tall light figure nodded and said, There is one thing that needs to be verified. After saying this, it pointed at the heavenly scarlet golden pearl. Chapter 1106. The tall silhouette pointed a finger at the heavenly scarlet golden bead. The bead immediately flashed with a purplish golden radiance. It was dazzling, and innumerable mysterious runes appeared on its surface. The Zenith Heaven Immortal in the heavenly scarlet golden bead also closed its eyes and activated its own demonic energy to coordinate with Lin Feng's actions. The layers of light fog flickered continuously, gradually condensing into an illusory realm of light and shadow. Lin Feng carefully observed the illusory realm of light and shadow through his newly refined clone. After a while, Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. He was slightly surprised to see the thousands of runes changing within the illusory realm of light and shadow. He tried to comprehend the information revealed within. So someone is trying to reconnect with the spirit ocean? And from the looks of it, they're trying to open the sealed spirit ocean ahead of time. The thousands of runes gradually constructed an illusory realm of light. No one could be seen in the illusory realm of light, and no specific objects could be seen. They could only vaguely see some existences that resembled white clouds. As Lin Feng watched this scene, he silently tried to figure out the concept of power revealed by the white clouds. He nodded slightly. It's indeed Taishu Temple. In the Netherworld Sea, there's a limit to how much power they can put in, and they're distracted. So it turns out they're really targeting the spirit ocean. However, it looks like there's no effect at the moment. They're probably still trying out various methods. Lin Feng's main body and Brontosaurus's clone returned to Mount Yujing together. The clone on Mount Penglai guarded the heavenly scarlet golden bead and quietly observed the changes. He also wanted to see if Taishu Temple had a way to open the spirit ocean ahead of time. On the other hand, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and the others also began to hunt down and eliminate the Underworld Hall cultivators. Cultivators from Taishu Temple and the Longevity Ancient Realm also participated. Following the clues provided by Lin Feng, the Underworld Hall cultivators were dug out by Zhu Yi and the others from hidden corners. One after another, the Underworld Hall's strongholds were destroyed. Among them, there was no lack of Underworld Hall experts who had reached the nascent Soul Realm. The divine land that had been peaceful for a long time suddenly stirred up a storm. The violent changes were too much for the eyes to take in. After a short period of observation, the Great Qin Dynasty, the Great Zhou Dynasty, the Heavenly Sword Sect, the Northern Militant Royal Court, and the Purple Cloud Dao also more or less invested their forces and participated. The Underworld Hall, which had always been hated by everyone, was in an unprecedentedly bad situation in the Heaven Primal World. Fortunately, the Underworld had already received a warning from the King of the Underworld and had begun to withdraw and hide on all fronts. They had also cut off all contact with each other. They were also mentally prepared for such a situation and had perfected their plans. At this moment, they were responding to the emergency mechanism and were barely able to cope with the sudden storm that came from the divine land. But even so, in the face of an all-encompassing attack from almost the entire human cultivation world, especially when they already had a lot of definite clues, even though the Underworld Hall was good at hiding, they still felt shaky. Within a dimensional realm belonging to the Great Qin Empire, there was a small village near a large city. The people living there were all ordinary people. In one of the houses, there was a 10-year-old boy with a ruddy complexion sleeping soundly. The others looked the same. But what the ordinary people could not see was that beside the sleeping boy, there was a handsome boy who looked exactly like him. He was meditating with his legs crossed, but his face was slightly pale. After a long while, the handsome boy opened his eyes. His right eye was pitch black, and it projected a black light and shadow in the room. A few figures swayed in the light and shadow. When they saw the boy, they all knelt down. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The boy was naturally the reincarnated king of the underworld. He had reincarnated in the mortal world, and his nickname was Happy. The king of the underworld silently looked at the few figures in front of him. "How are the losses?" One of them was a tall Dao integration expert dressed in a black robe. His appearance could not be seen clearly. He was the king of the underworld's trusted aide and the head of the Underworld Hall's 10 Yama kings, King Yama. He answered, "The middle and lower levels have suffered heavy losses. It's difficult to suppress the spread of the problem. It's even showing signs of spreading to us." The king of the underworld nodded. "We'll have to trouble you from now on. If necessary, we can cut off our losses." King Yama and the others bowed in unison. "As Your Majesty commands." A lean old man dressed in a black robe with a cultivation base of the Return to Void realm appeared. He was a trusted aide of the underworld monarch like the King of Hell. He was also one of the 10 kings of Hell of the Underworld Hall, the disobedient king, Sikongyu. Sikongyu said, "While the Great Zhou Empire and the Great Qin Empire are pursuing our Underworld Hall cultivators, they are also trying to recruit us in secret. The Great Zhou Empire is doing the most." The king of the underworld said nonchalantly, "Let them be. Let nature take its course. There's no need to deliberately plant hidden chess pieces. Instead, it'll be easier for them to track you down." Sikongyu replied respectfully, "Yes, Your Majesty." King Yama asked, "How should we deal with King Taishan and Emperor Song?" King Taishan and Emperor Song of the Underworld Hall's 10 Yama kings had both followed the previous hall master, Su Anda, and secretly betrayed the king of the underworld. Both of them died in the Xian Destroying War. After the Xian Destroying War, the new King Taishan was the current sect leader of the Reincarnation Sect, the former sect leader of the Azura Path, Mo Shuluo. The new Emperor Song was the current sect leader of the Reincarnation Sect, Shin Qifeng. Within the reincarnation sect, only the two of them knew of this identity. Ever since the Xian-destroying war, the reincarnation sect had been keeping a low profile. Although they didn't completely seal themselves off from the world like the Mount Shu sword sect, they were even more conservative than the Great Zhou Empire. Many times, many people would even unintentionally overlook this powerful sect that had once held an important position in the divine land. The king of the underworld said, "Let them maintain the status quo. Taishu Temple and Xianmen Tianzong won't touch the reincarnation sect for now. Just be wary of the Great Zhou Empire." The Yama king replied, "As you command." The king of the underworld stood up. The black light in his eyes suddenly turned white. White halos slid down from the top of his head and enveloped his entire body. As the light flowed, his pale face gradually regained some color. Although he hadn't completely returned to his normal state, his recovery speed was already amazing. The Yama king, Sikongyu, and the others all smiled. Although the king of the underworld hadn't returned to his peak state after his rebirth, he had gained new insights into the Tao, techniques, and concepts. As long as he wasn't killed on the spot and his body was destroyed, and his Tao foundation wasn't damaged, the king of the underworld could heal his injuries in a very short period of time. Even if the injuries were very serious, it was only a little slower. Although this recovery speed couldn't compare to that of the refined phantasm soul, it was still enough to shock the entire human cultivation world. If not for the fact that the powers that caused his injuries were Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword formation and the terrifying calamity of the Netherworld Sea, his recovery would have been even faster. The king of the underworld's expression was calm. He was the king of the underworld, the ruler of both the realms of life and death. He wasn't a grim reaper who only cultivated the will of slaughter and death. After his rebirth, his understanding of the abstruse power of the transformation between life and death had reached a whole new level. In this battle of the Netherworld Sea, he didn't reveal it to Lin Feng or the people of Taishu Temple. The purpose of participating in the battle of the Netherworld Sea was not to compete with Lin Feng and the others. Other than destroying the chaotic void created by the power of heavenly calamity, preventing Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple from controlling the Netherworld Sea immediately and delaying their efficiency, it was also to prepare for the next step of the plan. All of you, retreat for now and make your preparations. Although the opportunity is hard to predict, the war between the two realms is imminent. We should prepare for a rainy day, the king of the underworld said as his hands formed a series of hand seals. He raised his hand and pointed lightly. A black vortex suddenly appeared beneath his feet. The king of the underworld stepped into it and his cultivation base and magical power immediately began to grow again, continuously advancing towards the peak of his past. The few people present were all his trusted and loyal subordinates. King Yanluo and Sikongyu were not surprised by the scene before them because they knew that the ritual that the king of the underworld used to recover his cultivation base was previously borrowing the power of the Netherworld Sea, but it didn't mean that he couldn't use it once he left the Netherworld Sea. However, without borrowing the power of the Netherworld Sea, the efficiency of this ritual would be lower, and the other resources it would consume would also be a dazzling astronomical figure. But for the king of the underworld, with his many years of preparation, it was still affordable. The reason why he had purposely appeared in the Netherworld Sea to fight against Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple when there was clearly no need for it was merely to mislead them. At the same time, it was also to prepare for the next step of his plan. The dark light projection that King Yanluo, Sikongyu, and the rest were in gradually disappeared, and another light projection illusion appeared in front of the king of the underworld. The person who appeared in the light projection illusion was a middle-aged Taoist in a black robe. His face was like jade, and he had a 3-foot-long beard. He had an outstanding demeanor, but at that moment, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and he seemed abnormally weak. It was the third disciple of the king of the underworld, Daoist Yuming. Daoist Yuming bowed to the king of the underworld. "Greetings, your majesty." The king of the underworld said faintly, "Yuming, to you, this time around, your disciple has given you, his master, a lesson. You should keep this matter in mind." Daoist Yuming's face was pale. "It's because I've been used to a comfortable life all these years that I've lost my vigilance, allowing Shintaze to take advantage of it." If your majesty had not prepared a final life-saving measure for me, it would indeed be difficult for me to escape this time around. It's just that Shintuzhe has snatched away the power to control the Netherworld Sea, and I'm afraid that your majesty's great plans will be ruined. The king of the underworld said, "It's fine. Right now, Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple are keeping a close eye on the Netherworld Sea. If I were to use the power of the Netherworld Sea to control the ritual again, not only would all my previous efforts be in vain, but I would also be targeted by them again. It's good that things are like this now. In the future, you can give them a surprise. Shintuzhe thinks that you're already dead, so you can also give him a surprise." Daoist Yuming knelt on the ground and kowtowed. "In the end, it's because I didn't manage my subordinates properly that I caused so many incidents, causing your majesty to suffer losses." The king of the underworld shook his head. "When something bad has already happened, there's no point in regretting it. What you need to think about is how to make use of it and turn it into something good. At the very least, you can't make it worse. Everything else is fine. It's a pity to give up the Netherworld Sea. However, if Xianmen Tianzong's people hadn't passed through the world within a world where Wen Qiang used to live and entered the chaotic void created by the power of heavenly calamity, I and the people from Taishu Temple wouldn't have been able to enter, so it's not a big deal." A faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "It's good that things are like this now. You can only gain if you give up something. If not for this incident, Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple would still be keeping a close eye on me. How would they be willing to fight the war between the two realms with the demon race? Today is just the beginning." The Emperor of the Underworld opened his palm, and two underworld Dao fruits of life and death hovered in the air. One of the Dao fruits imprisoned the Daoist blood river's evil soul, and the other Dao fruit had a glowing shadow flickering. The king of the underworld said softly, "The war between the two realms, come quickly." Chapter 1107. The king of the underworld looked at Daoist Yuming. "Don't go back to the Netherworld Sea. That place is now completely under the control of Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple. At least before the next war between the two worlds begins, don't set foot in the Netherworld Sea again. Only after the war between the two worlds erupts will it be your opportunity to return to the Netherworld Sea." Although Shintuzhe has obtained the authority to mobilize a portion of the power of the Netherworld Sea from you, and has also grasped a remnant stone of heavenly misfortune, I don't think he will dare to appear in the Netherworld Sea so easily. The king of the underworld smiled. Even without Shintuzhe's remnant stone of heavenly misfortune, Xianmen Tianzong's Xiao Yan might be able to completely control the Netherworld Sea with the passage of time. Shintuzhe similarly can't afford to wait. His opportunity will also be in the war between the two worlds. At that time, you will know what to do." Daoist Yuming bowed and said, "Your disciple understands." With that, he bowed and left. The black figure in front of the king of the underworld disappeared. Silently, he stood on the spot. The black vortex below him spun non-stop, and the area below his knees was once again submerged into the vortex. Above the king of the underworld's head, streams of white light poured down like a curtain of water, enveloping his entire body, causing the king of the underworld's injuries to continuously recover. However, a hint of gloom flashed in the king of the underworld's eyes. The heaven-punishing sword formation. What a powerful attack power, and it even contains an extremely strong power of destruction. Even my netherworld great Tao of life and death was slightly injured. If not for that, I should have recovered even faster. The master of the celestial sect of wonders, Lin Feng. This is truly an opponent that has exceeded my expectations. He looked at the two netherworld Dao fruits in his hands, and his gaze finally landed on the Dao fruit that had imprisoned Daoist blood river. He frowned. I've made a mistake. Leaving this Dao fruit behind is somewhat of a loss, the king of the underworld thought to himself. His figure gradually turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the house, leaving behind only his mortal self who was still sleeping soundly. Someone pushed the door open and walked in. It was a man with a slightly aged face but a very robust body. The old man looked at the sleeping young man with a benevolent smile. The young man turned over and woke up. He sat up in a daze and rubbed his eyes. Seeing the old man, a smile appeared on the young man's face. He was slightly embarrassed. "Grandpa, I fell asleep just now." He quickly turned over and got off the ground. "I'll work in the fields with you." The old man smiled and said, "Silly child, just study hard. It's hard for our family to produce a good student." The handsome youth smiled and said, "I've already finished my homework." "You can't just study. Even if you're a scholar, you can't be inattentive." "Good, good, good." The old man chuckled and said, "My Happy said it so well." Although he already had a name, his family was still used to calling him by his nickname. The youth named Happy smiled and went forward to go out with the old man. Actually, this was said by the teacher in the private school. I thought it made sense, so I remembered it. The old man pointed at him and said with a smile, "You child." The grandfather and grandson left the room together. In the Yingxi, in the main hall on Mount Penglai, the tall light figure sat cross-legged in front of the heavenly eye golden bead. He pointed at the golden bead and silently watched the image projected by the golden bead. On the screen, the white clouds kept rolling and unfolding, changing unpredictably. However, looking at the rolling clouds, Lin Feng was not anxious. This was because although the Taishu Temple was trying to reopen its spiritual sea in advance, it was clearly unsuccessful. Even though it can't reopen its spiritual sea immediately, will it shorten the 100-year period? Lin Feng pondered while observing the image. On Mount Yujing, on the third floor of the scripture tower, Lin Feng and Brontosaurus's clone sat opposite each other. Silently, they were also studying their own Tao. The divine battle clone stood on the mysterious heavenly treasure tree and looked at the gate of the star ocean before him. A few figures walked out from the gate of the star ocean. They were led by Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone and Wang Lin's great demon clone. For Zhu Yi and Wang Lin's clones, cultivating in the star ocean was more efficient than cultivating in the colossal world. Behind them were Yu Hongyan and Luo Qinggu. After cultivating in seclusion for a period of time, they had entered the ancient desolate star ocean to cultivate. This time, they had returned with Zhu Yi and Wang Lin. When the four saw Lin Feng, they bowed and greeted, "Master." There were a few outstanding disciples who entered the star ocean with them. They also bowed and greeted, "Greetings, Ancestral Master." Lin Feng's divine battle clone waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite." Zhu Yi and the others gestured for their disciples to return to their cave abodes, while they stayed behind. Luo Qinggu asked curiously, "Master, I heard from senior brother Zhu Yi and senior brother Wang Lin that senior brother Xiao Yan had obtained the creation divine light of Tao Master Scarlet Sun, the leader of the four ancient talents of the Taishu Temple. What kind of creation divine light is it?" The divine god of battle clone sat cross-legged on a branch of the mysterious heaven treasure tree and waved his hand, signaling Luo Qinggu and the others to take a seat as well. He then said with a smile, "You can ask your eldest senior brother yourself the next time you see him." Luo Qinggu nodded with a smile and a look of fascination appeared on her face. Tao Master Scarlet Sun is indeed a peerless hero. Among the cultivators outside of our sect, he is the person I admire the most. Zhu Yi's vast young doppelganger's mind was connected to his main body. Even with the netherworld sea as a barrier, there was still some obstruction. However, after leaving the netherworld sea, Zhu Yi's mind was as fast as lightning, and he immediately knew everything that had happened in the netherworld sea. Wang Lin and Zhu Yi had chased after the underworld hall cultivators together, so he had naturally listened to Zhu Yi's detailed account of the trip to the netherworld sea. Even Wang Lin was surprised after hearing it. Yu Hongyan and Luo Qinggu, who met up with Zhu Yi and Wang Lin's clone in the desolate ancient star ocean, were also fascinated after hearing it. Yu Hongyan nodded, for Tao Master Scarlet Sun, not knowing the truth might be a blessing. Luo Qinggu tilted her head and looked at Lin Feng. "However, Master, I suddenly thought of something. What happened to the child of Tao Master Scarlet Sun and his wife?" Lin Feng answered, "No one knows the details. Wen Qiyang, Xia Huang, the king of the underworld, and the Taishu Temple don't know. Maybe he survives and grows into an unparalleled expert, only that he himself doesn't know about his past. Maybe he knows about his past and secretly plans revenge in the dark. Maybe he survives but lives an ordinary life, experiencing the birth, aging, sickness, and death of a normal person. Lin Feng's tone was calm, or maybe he doesn't have anyone to take care of him, dying before he grows up. When Emperor Xia killed the cloud demon back then, he let the cloud demon send the child away. Whether or not this situation was reported to the Void Temple is still unclear. If the Void Temple knew that the child survived, regardless of whether it was to raise the child or to cut the weeds by the roots, they would definitely search for the child. With their usual style, there is no way they would ignore it. Lin Feng said, however, based on the current situation, it's certain that the child didn't end up in Taishu Temple. As for his fate, it's hard to predict. Wang Lin fell silent. After a while, he said slowly, Master, I feel that the king of the underworld's actions are a little abnormal. Hearing him say this, Zhu Yi nodded in agreement. Yu Hongyan and Luo Qinggu both fell into deep thought. Lin Feng smiled. Little Lin, you're very alert. The king of the underworld is someone who plans far ahead. Every word and action of his must be cautious. Even though I don't know what the emperor of the underworld is planning, he is definitely not as simple as he seems. What he is best at is when the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman reaps the benefits. In the vast land of the divine continent, the conflict between our sect and the Void Temple is his opportunity. In the overall situation of the great heaven primordial world, the war between the two worlds is also the opportunity he's been waiting for. Everyone nodded. Lin Feng continued, everyone, focus on cultivating and preparing. I have a feeling that the war between the two worlds is not far away. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Luo Qinggu nodded and went to cultivate. Zhu Yi and Wang Lin went without saying. Yu Hongyan and Luo Qinggu were both in the late Yuanying stage and had already formed their universal Dharma powers. However, they still had a long way to go before they could break through to the primordial soul stage. Li Yuanfang was the same. He had been cultivating in seclusion all year round. Therefore, Lin Feng had specially asked him to participate in the operation to hunt down the underworld hall cultivators as training. Among all the personal disciples, Yang Qing was the only one who was still in the middle Yuanying stage. He was the last one. However, this was because he had been practicing medicine all year round and did not spend most of his time and energy on cultivation. At the same time, he did not have a cave that could accelerate time to use. However, fulfilling his wish was of great help to the improvement of his state of mind. When Lin Feng saw him this time, he knew that he had accumulated a lot. This time, he and Li Yuanfang followed Zhu Yi and Wang Lin to hunt down the underworld hall cultivators together. This was to make use of actual combat to improve his state of mind. In this way, when he returned to the mountain again and entered the mysterious Heaven Time Light Cave, he would be able to easily form his universal Dharma powers and reach the late Yuanying stage after some time of accumulation. As expected, not long after, although the operation to hunt down the underworld hall cultivators was still ongoing, Yang Qing returned to Yujing Mountain. After meeting Lin Feng, Yang Qing entered the mysterious Heaven Time Light Cave and began to cultivate in order to break through to the late Yuanying stage. Tan Yunqing, Li Yuanfang's disciple, returned with him. His cultivation was originally at the peak of the late Golden Elixir stage. Now that the bottleneck had loosened, he also had the hope of breaking through to the Void Thunder Tribulation and forming his nascent soul. Before him, Lu Xiafeng and Li Xingfei had successfully formed their nascent souls. Zhao Huan and Zhuge Wanqiu were also trying to break through to the Yuanying stage together with Tan Yunqing. As time passed, the three of them also successfully formed their nascent souls. Among Lin Feng's disciples, there were officially 20 people who had formed their nascent souls within 50 years. Lin Feng nodded slightly when he saw this. He issued an order to Zhu Yi and the others to open the mountain gates again to recruit disciples. This time, the number of disciples would officially expand to more than 1,000. If there were no accidents, this would also be the last time Xianmen Tianzong recruited disciples on a large scale before the war between the two realms. Not only was it for the sake of talent reserve, but at the same time, Lin Feng was also keeping an eye on the system's main mission. Chapter 1108. As for the special reward of the system's main task, Lin Feng did not accelerate his own time and withdraw it in advance. Instead, he patiently watched the disciples under his sect slowly cultivate, and more young people grew up. Lin Feng himself also calmed down. While practicing his magical powers, he also paid attention to Taishu Temple's attempt to reopen the spiritual sea. During this period of time, the main theme in the Divine Land was to eliminate the underworld hall cultivators. Every once in a while, there would be news of progress. With the passage of time, the frequency of the news gradually decreased, but correspondingly, the cultivation and status of the underworld hall cultivators who were captured and killed also increased. Especially recently, a big fish was caught. King Dusher, one of the 10 sub-temple masters of the Underworld Hall and one of the 10 infernal kings of the Underworld Hall, was captured by Taishu Temple. This immediately triggered a chain reaction. The sub-temple under King Dusher's jurisdiction was quickly uprooted from top to bottom, and it even began to spread to the other 10 infernal kings of the Underworld Hall. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and the others also had their own gains. For a time, the Underworld Hall seemed to have fallen into a state of turmoil. The storm outside did not affect the orderly internal operations of Xianmen Tianzong. Xiao Yan lived in the Netherworld Sea realm for a long time. While continuing to strengthen his communication with the Netherworld Sea, he also refined the 9-sun divine light he obtained from Wenqiyang. On Yujing Mountain, Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger, Wang Lin's great devil doppelganger, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, Luo Qingguo, and the others were also concentrating on cultivating, improving their strength, and preparing for the real storm that might come at any time. The matter of Xianmen Tianzong reopening the mountain gate to recruit disciples was also carried out in an orderly manner. Now that the second-generation successor disciples had grown up, many affairs had been entrusted to their respective disciples by Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others. The rules and inheritance of Xianmen Tianzong had been formally established. Without any major accidents, the daily operation was completely systematic, and Lin Feng and his disciples did not need to worry about it anymore. They would go to various places to set up spots to accept disciples, carry out preliminary selections, and then bring them back to Cloud Mirror City to temporarily stay. After passing the test and review of the heart-reflecting staircase under the cloud peak, a young talent could become an official disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, a foundational disciple. After Lin Feng perfected and fine-tuned the heart-reflecting staircase many times, not only can it test if the disciple harbors evil intentions, but it also has a comprehensive examination of the disciple's aptitude. Many of the techniques were created by Lin Feng. The process seemed simple, but there were actually layers upon layers of tests. It was complicated but systematic, and they were all summed up through repeated experiences. Those who could not pass the test of the heart-reflecting ladder would be expelled if they had ulterior motives. As for those who had shortcomings in certain areas, if they were willing, they could arrange to live in Cloud Mirror City and wait for the next opportunity to be apprenticed to a master. Those who wanted to enter Mirror Lake Academy to study were also completely voluntary. Those who wanted to move their families to Cloud Mirror City, or move to Sand Continent City or Mystic Heaven Domain to live, Xianmen Tianzong would also have an outer sect steward to help with the arrangements. According to the gradually formed practice, after a new batch of disciples entered the sect, the disciples who had laid the foundation earlier would also welcome another successor disciple test. First, there would be an overall test. Those who passed the test could become a successor disciple. Then, these successor disciples would go to Fentian Cliff, Qian Tian Palace, and other cave dwellings to choose their desired targets. After choosing, they would undergo the second round of cave dwelling selection. Those who passed would be apprenticed to a master, and those who failed would not be returned. Instead, they would be randomly assigned to the cave dwellings of other lineages. At this moment, at the foot of the White Mountain Rock where Luo Qingwu's Light Dance Pavilion was located, there was a group of junior disciples who had passed the overall test on the empty space connected to the Rainbow Long Bridge. Their cultivations varied. The main purpose of the successor disciple selection was to test the disciples' future potential, and not their current strength. Lin Feng was originally meditating. Suddenly, his heart moved slightly, and his gaze fell in the direction of the light dance pavilion. He revealed a trace of a smile. Interesting. This time, the number of disciples who passed the overall test was not large, but the number of people who chose to be apprenticed to the light dance pavilion was not small, catching up with the number of disciples who chose the most popular choice of Fantian Cliff and Qian Tian Palace. There were many reasons for this. On one hand, it was because Tang Jun and Lin Tong of Fantian Palace, and Yang Tai and Ing Luo Jia of Qian Tian Palace were not there. On the other hand, it was because the second-generation chief of the Light Dance Pavilion, Han Yang, was now famous. He was recognized as one of the top 3 second-generation disciples, and was on par with Tang Jun and Zhou Yunsong. He was quite prestigious among the junior disciples. Another factor was that everyone in the Celestial Sect of Wonders knew that the Light Dance Pavilion specialized in cultivating sword cultivators within the sect. This caused some of the younger disciples who were either talented in the way of the sword or interested in the way of the sword to flock to it. However, if it was just this, there would still not be so many people who wanted to be apprenticed to the Light Dance Pavilion. According to the previous news, the assessment of the Light Dance Pavilion had always been very strict. But knowing that the assessment was strict, there were still many newly promoted true disciples who wanted to be apprenticed. Because as everyone knew, the master of the Light Dance Pavilion, Luo Qinggu, only accepted 8 true disciples. Now, there were already many third-generation true disciples in the Light Dance Pavilion, but the 8 places for the second-generation true disciples were not full yet. In recent years, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others basically did not personally accept disciples. Even if there were rare good seedlings, they would be sent to Tang Jun, Yang Tai, and the others to prepare for the next inheritance of the sect. In this case, the Light Dance Pavilion gradually became another popular choice for the junior disciples to choose cave residences. The threshold for disciples in Xianmen Tianzong was originally very high. The junior disciples also had their own confidence and pride, and naturally hoped that they could go higher. In front of these junior disciples stood 7 people in purple clothes, 5 men and 2 women. 6 of them were carrying long swords, and only the leader was empty-handed. The leader was a young man of medium build, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, a jade-like face, and an extraordinarily handsome appearance. But with a smile on the corner of his mouth, he gave people the feeling that he was not as sharp as ordinary sword cultivators. But all the junior disciples in front of him did not dare to look down on this handsome young man, because he was the only Yuanian cultivator among the 7 people, and also the head of the Light Dance Pavilion's second-generation true disciples, Han Yang. The daily affairs of the Light Dance Pavilion had been mostly handed over by Luo Qinggu to Han Yang, and Han Yang handled them. The junior disciples saw him more than they saw Luo Qinggu. Although Han Yang was not very old, he was already a Yuanian cultivator. Outside of Yujing Mountain, when cultivators with lower cultivations saw him, they would respectfully call him Supreme Tian Shu, or even Ancestor Tian Shu. On one hand, it was because of the power of the celestial sect of Xianmen. On the other hand, it was because of Han Yang's own terrifying strength. All these years, he had been out adventuring, and the number of nascent soul cultivators and monster kings he had defeated or killed was not small. Among them, there was no lack of late nascent soul or monster kings. On the left and right of Han Yang stood 3 young cultivators. One of them, a round-faced woman, smiled, looked at Han Yang, and said, "Senior brother Tian Shu, let me do it." Han Yang nodded indifferently. He did not care about the form, after all, the rules were set by him. When the round-faced woman saw this, she stepped forward, looked at the junior disciples in front of her, and said with a smile, "My Light Dance Pavilion's assessment is very simple, but it will take a long time to complete. In front of you, there is a mountain road that leads straight to the pavilion at the top of the mountain. The space on the mountain road is distorted, and it will send you to our sect's Great Law Hall. The arena of the Great Law Hall has already formed a huge foreign space. You need to find the road mark left behind by senior brother Tian Shu within 3 days. Through the road mark, you will be transported back to the mountain road, and from there, climb to the top of the mountain. She paused for a moment, and then continued, in the foreign space, you will encounter all kinds of attacks and dangers. Although the Great Law Hall has a magic power restriction to protect you from death, it can also cause you to be disabled. Therefore, you can now choose to withdraw from my Light Dance Pavilion's assessment. Everyone looked at each other, and after a moment of contemplation, their bodies did not move. The round-faced woman nodded with satisfaction, and then continued, if you cannot find the road mark within 3 days, then you will be eliminated. If you suffer a deadly attack, and activate the magic power restriction of the Great Law Hall, then you will also be eliminated. Do you understand? Everyone nodded with dignified expressions, and the round-faced woman immediately said, then, you can now climb the mountain road. The group of disciples bowed to Han Yang and the others, and then climbed the mountain road together. Afterwards, they were transported by the distorted space into the foreign space created by the Great Law Hall. After going in, they understood what they were facing. Everyone was separated from each other, and they could only move by themselves. At the same time, they were unable to use magic power to communicate with each other. The foreign space they were in was like a real world, and there were all kinds of demon races, as well as unknown people attacking them. Although the cultivation of these demon races and enemies were suppressed to a certain degree, it still made the disciples who participated in the assessment suffer greatly. The strength of the opponents actually did not hold much of an advantage against the Xianmen Tianzong disciples, and they were even at a disadvantage. Although the cultivation of the disciples who participated in the assessment was different, but under Han Yang's careful control, the individual opponents that they encountered were limited to be lower than the Xianmen Tianzong disciples. But this did not mean that the opponents were weak. On the contrary, all of the enemies, regardless of demon race or human race, were extremely vicious, cunning and vicious to the extreme. Besieging, assassinating, ambushing, traps, these were the most basic and most common household chores, and any opponent could use them. Although the individual strength of the enemies was not as strong as the Xianmen Tianzong disciples, but every time the disciples who participated in the assessment encountered an ambush, the opponents never had the intention to fight them alone, and always came in groups to besiege them. The enemies who looked like human cultivators would also pretend to be friendly, and help the Xianmen Tianzong disciples kill the demons, to gain their trust, and then suddenly launch sneak attacks at the critical moment. Sometimes, the disciples who participated in the assessment obtained clues about the spatial waymark, but other times it turned out to be a trap laid by the enemies. Some Xianmen Tianzong disciples did not know the situation at first, and acted bravely, subconsciously saving the human race who was attacked by the demon race, but the next moment, the other party might bite the hand that feeds them, and stab them in the back, causing the Xianmen Tianzong disciple to die with everlasting regret. Sometimes, there were also some human cultivators who treated others with kindness, and formed friendships with the Xianmen Tianzong disciples, but there would always be other villains who secretly framed, sowed discord, and made the disciple unable to explain himself, and fell into the crowd's siege. For all these reasons, there were countless, but there had never been an enemy who openly fought with the disciples who participated in the assessment. At the foot of the Light Dance Pavilion, Han Yang looked at all this calmly, and a serious-looking woman next to him turned to look at him. Senior brother Tianshu, what you do is not good for the disciples' temperament, and is very likely to lead them to evil. Chapter 1109. Oh. I don't think so. When Han Yang heard this, he turned to look at the serious-looking young female sword cultivator and nonchalantly said, Junior sister Tian Xian, you don't have any problems, do you? When the female disciple with the Dao named Tian Xian heard this, her expression became even more serious and a bit of anger appeared in her eyes. She couldn't help but recall the time when she joined the Light Dance Pavilion. At that time, Han Yang hadn't reached nascent soul formation yet, and the results of the first test were similar. During the test, she was caught by the enemy's sneak attack and was captured alive. Then, the light illusion projected by the Great Law Hall's magic power restriction actually wanted to defile her. Fortunately, she was calm by nature and could still stabilize her mind. Her cultivation was also strong, so when she activated her trump card, she turned defeat into victory and escaped with her life before the illusion of light and shadow could succeed. Although she knew that it was a virtual illusion, when she recalled that experience, she felt a chill run down her spine. Looking at Tian Xian, who was staring at him, Han Yang's expression was calm. Junior sister Tian Xian, you are a female cultivator. Although you often have a straight face, you are beautiful and refined. In the eyes of most people, you are a rare beauty. If you meet someone who likes sex, they will inevitably be deeply attracted to you. Even if the other party isn't lustful, your talent is outstanding, your foundation is solid, and your cultivation and magic power are both excellent. If you fall into the hands of an enemy who cultivates a plucking technique, you will be an excellent cauldron. At that time, do you think what I showed you in the Great Law Hall will happen? Tian Xian stared at Han Yang. Then you went too far. If I didn't break free myself, do you really want me to experience it? Han Yang shrugged. Of course not. Not to mention the fact that the projection of light and shadow doesn't have that kind of ability, it will stop before it actually hurts you. However, if it's judged to be successful, you will be eliminated. There are some things that you will only be able to remember deeply if you have personally experienced them. Only then will you be constantly on guard. At the same time, you will be able to sum up your experience and know how to take precautions. When something really happens, you will be able to react immediately instead of being scared silly and letting the other party do whatever they want to you. Most of the time, even if you know what to do, you might not be able to deal with it calmly and methodically when it comes to it. In some cases, opportunities are fleeting. If you delay for a moment, you might be doomed. Han Yang looked at the scene of the spreading law hall in front of him in a relaxed manner. For example, when this disciple was betrayed by his companions, he stood there in shock and anger, like a wooden block, and let go of 3 opportunities to turn the tables. There's also this person. He was tricked by the other party. He was sold, but he still helped to count the money. Han Yang had a faint smile on his face. When they were foundation disciples in the Cloud Peak, I taught them all these things. But now, it seems that how many of them can apply what they have learned and how many of them keep it in mind. Most of them just ignore my words. There are a lot of principles that if you just tell them verbally, they won't remember them. They will only think that you are trying to scare them, making a mountain out of a molehill, and trying to please the crowd. But if you let them experience it once, they will remember it for the rest of their lives. As for those who don't remember the lesson and forget the pain once the scar heals, it doesn't matter. I will often give them a lesson until they remember it. Tian Xian said in a deep voice, you can't have the heart to harm others, but you can't have the heart to guard against others. That's true, but if you do it often, it might poison their minds and make them walk down the wrong path, making them commit crimes. In the long run, if it continues to spread, it may even affect the atmosphere of the entire light dance pavilion. If it continues to spread, it will affect the atmosphere of the entire Xianmen Tianzong sect. It is not an alarmist. Han Yang nodded, you are right. So at this time, we, as the elders, need to constantly guide and educate them to ensure that they do not deviate from the right path. You can't raise all of your disciples to be obedient and not let them suffer any harm. If they only learn the magical arts, then they will be considered a good master. Unless you want to protect them for the rest of their lives and never come into contact with the outside world, they will have to face these things themselves. Han Yang pointed at the illusory light shadow in front of him and said, Great Law Hall has dermic seal to protect their lives. Once they go out, there will be no dermic seal to protect them. Just these few people, if they were to leave Kunlun Mountain and encounter the same situation, they would already be dead. Of course, I don't deny that the situation I created is quite extreme. It is not easy to encounter it in the real world, but it does not mean that it will not happen. Tian Xian remained silent, quietly watching the scene that appeared in the light and shadow illusion. He watched as several disciples triggered the Great Law Hall's Dharma power restriction, and after the Dharma power restriction attacked them, they were sent out. When these disciples saw that they were outside the Great Hall, they immediately knew that they had failed the test and were eliminated. Some were ashamed and covered their faces as they walked away, some sighed helplessly, and some refused to accept it and returned to the foot of the light dance pavilion. This disciple bowed to Han Yang, Tian Xian, and the others. Han Yang nodded and did not say anything. The round-faced woman looked at him. If you want to watch, you can. After the test is over, we will gather the eliminated disciples and assign you to other caves. Yes. The disciple responded and began to focus on the light illusion. After a while, the disciple frowned and looked at Han Yang. He wanted to say something but stopped. What do you want to say? Just say it. Han Yang did not turn his head and stared at the illusion. The disciple replied, I want to ask, why does everyone encounter different situations? If I encounter some situations, I will not be eliminated. At this time, Han Yang finally turned his head and looked at the disciple. Before the test, did they say that everyone will encounter the same situation? The disciple was stunned, but this is not fair. Fair? Han Yang laughed. When you are alone in the outside world and you are tricked by an enemy, you can tell them that this is too despicable and shameless. If they have the ability, then we can fight fair and square. Do you think they will agree? At that time, will you also tell them that this is not fair? Do you think the enemy who wants to kill you will talk about fairness? Tian Xian frowned. Senior brother Tian Shu. Han Yang smiled slightly and turned his head, no longer saying anything. Tian Xian looked at the disciple and sighed. Look carefully again. Although this test is very inhumane, it is actually very fair. The junior disciple was slightly taken aback. He took a closer look, and after a while, he gradually came to his senses. His face was slightly pale. Before the disciples passed this successor test, they were all foundation disciples who got along with each other day and night. Although they could not say that they understood each other very well, they more or less knew each other. Everyone in the Great Law Hall faced different difficulties and dangers, but they were all aimed at the flaws in their character that they had revealed on a daily basis. They were aimed at different people, and all had their own targets. Different people had different personalities, different understandings of things, and different ways of thinking in dealing with things. When the same thing happened, the result would naturally be different. Some people could get through it safely, but some people might not even have time to react before they died on the spot. The disciple's body swayed slightly, and he cupped his hands towards Han Yang. This disciple was impulsive. Please forgive me, Chief. Han Yang chuckled lightly. Remember today's lesson, don't forget the pain once the scar has healed. At this time, a tall and handsome young man crossed the Rainbow Bridge and arrived at the foot of the mountain of the Light Dance Pavilion's cave residence. His gaze was serious, and people could tell at a glance that he was a person who was strict with himself. When Tian Xian saw this person, he slightly raised his eyebrows. Senior brother Tian Fang. The person who came was Li Yuanfang's disciple, He Luoju's second-generation successor seat disciple, Tan Yunqing. Tan Yunqing looked at Tian Xian and the others and nodded. Junior brothers and junior sisters, greetings. My He Luoju's test has been completed, so I came here to take a look. Please forgive me for disturbing you. He looked at the light and shadow illusion in front of Han Yang, and with just a glance, he slightly frowned. As expected, you are using this test again. Han Yang, who had not turned his head since he appeared, said lightly, What, is there a problem? Tan Yunqing asked, Don't you know that you are poisoning the minds of these disciples, and it is very likely that they will deviate from the right path? Han Yang turned his head to look at him, and slowly said, Ignorance and recklessness are not brave, and innocence that has not come into contact with evil cannot be considered good. Only when one is clearly aware of the danger and can overcome the fear in one's heart can it be called brave, and only when one understands evil and evil but does not do it can it be called good. This world is not a place of light, and not letting them come into contact with the truth is harming them. Teaching them these principles and then guiding them on the right path is what we, as masters, should do. Tan Yunqing said in a low voice, Have you forgotten what happened last time? During the test, you actually used the light and shadow illusion to create the illusion of your own disciples to deceive the test participants, causing the tragedy of fellow disciples killing each other. Han Yang glanced at him. For the demon race that is skilled in illusion, such as the Heavenly Fox race or the Origin Mirage race, if the transformation of a great demon of the immortal demon Soul Tear is a great demon, even you and I would have to spend a lot of effort to distinguish the real from the fake. If it is the primordial true spirit tier, without special methods, we would not be able to distinguish it either. Our own disciples have special identification marks, but he did not do any verification at all, and directly believed that the fake one was. It is indeed sad for fellow disciples to kill each other, but if the transformed enemy deceives the disciples of our own sect to do things for them and harm the sect, it could lead to an even greater disaster. Tan Yunqing said, "You also said that to teach them these principles, we must guide them on the right path." But the final result of the previous incident was that a good seedling almost had his will completely broken down by you. It was only recently that he recovered, but his personality began to become suspicious, and even when he looked at his fellow disciples, his eyes were filled with distrust. You have to teach them the experience of how to conduct oneself in the world, and to guard against the enemy's hidden schemes. There is nothing wrong with this, but everything should have a bottom line. If what you did last time is spread, it might even affect the cohesion within our own sect. The round-faced woman at the side couldn't help but say, "Senior brother Tianshu has always been guiding and educating that disciple, so that person has gradually recovered recently, and after that, senior brother Tianshu still often goes to see him. Senior brother Tian Fang, if you observe carefully, you can see that the condition of that disciple has been constantly improving." Chapter 11:10. The round-faced woman wanted to say something more, but Han Yang raised his hand to stop her. He turned to look at Tan Yunqing. "Tan Yunqing, do you know that there is a big difference between you and me? I actually don't like your way of doing things." Han Yang's originally lazy gaze gradually became sharp, even making people feel a stabbing pain, as if they were facing a peerless divine sword. "But I won't be like you, running to your territory and pointing fingers at you." Tan Yunqing was unmoved. She calmly replied, "Since I know about the matter, I won't be indifferent. Whether it's good or bad will be verified by facts," Han Yang said. "You haven't forgotten about martial nephew Yuan Gang, have you?" Hearing this, Tan Yunqing frowned slightly. Lin Feng had decided that the first 8 generations of the Xianmen Tianzong would be Xiantian Yuantai, Daojing Linghua, and the Yuan generation would be the generation of the 3rd generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. They were also the disciples and successors of Han Yang and Tan Yunqing. Yuan Gang was Tan Yunqing's first disciple, an outstanding cultivator among the 3rd generation true disciples of Heluoju. He was the first 3rd generation true disciple of Heluoju to form the golden elixir. He was magnanimous and disciplined, and was highly regarded by Tan Yunqing. However, he was too upright, and when he went out to train in the past, he almost suffered a great loss because of this. Fortunately, his fellow disciples were by his side, and he narrowly escaped. And that fellow disciple was Han Yang's true disciple, Lian Huazhao. His Daoist name was Yuan Du, and he was currently the #1 person among the 3rd generation true disciples of Light Dance Pavilion. Han Yang turned his head and looked at the illusory scene of light and shadow in Spreading Law Hall again. "I don't want any disciples of our sect to die outside in the future, and their biggest obsession before they die is, Master, Martial Uncle, why is this world completely different from what you've said? Why don't the enemies fight me openly? Why do they gang up on me? Why are all the enemies so despicable? As for what you said about Sun Henning's incident, it will affect the unity of the sect. I don't deny that it is possible if it is spread. But this kind of thing can't be promoted at all, because the vast majority of people won't fall for it at all. That fake is too easy to recognize. If you pay a little attention, you won't be tricked." Sun Henning was the disciple Tan Yunqing had mentioned before. She was a female disciple who was now studying under Zhuge Wanqiu in Barren Sky Valley. Han Yang looked at the eliminated disciple and said, "When you were learning in Cloud Peak, I taught you how to use the sect's special arcane energy to verify each other's identity. How many times did I emphasize it?" When the disciple met Han Yang's gaze, he was stunned for a moment before he subconsciously replied, "Every time you come to teach, you will ask this question." Han Yang then pointed at Tan Yunqing. "Apart from me, did any of the direct elders who taught you talk about this problem?" "You," Han Yang said. From most." Han Yang asked, "Do you all remember it?" The disciple nodded. For them, this had basically become an instinctive and subconscious behavior. It would not affect the relationship between them, and it had nothing to do with trust. Beside Han Yang, Tianxian and the others also sighed secretly. For them, this was also an instinctive behavior. Due to the existence of the art of illusory transformation and illusory transformation, this was, in fact, widely spread throughout the entire Divine Continent and even Tianhuang mainland. It was a conventional thing and every sect would have such a thing in their internal culture. However, if the cultivation of the person who made the illusion was too high, it was still possible to imitate the identification mark. However, the identification mark of the Xianmen Tianzong lineage was personally set by Lin Feng. If one wanted to imitate it, one had to be at least a primordial Shen or a heavenly fox in the Dharma-ending realm. Furthermore, it could only fool Xianmen Tianzong disciples below the primordial spirit realm. Under my repeated orders, everyone could remember it, but why can't Sun Hanning remember it? Slowly, Han Yang said, why do I have to mention it every time I teach? Because I realized that Sun Hanning still couldn't remember it before the assessment, so I had to teach it again and again. He chuckled. But now, it seems that talking too much is really worthless. Maybe I'll even seem long-winded. Tan Yunqing looked at Han Yang. Sun Hanning's personality is too simple, and she's even a little simple-minded and slow in dealing with people. I know this, but even if you want to focus on teaching, everything should be done in an orderly manner. Do you know the consequences of what you did last time? She's not your enemy, she's a junior from the same sect. Tan Yunqing said word by word, you can't use this kind of method to punish her just because she turned a deaf ear to your teachings. Han Yang shook his head and laughed. Tan Yunqing, you underestimate me too much. I won't stoop so low as to use a junior disciple to vent my anger. There are some things that can only be truly learned, and remembered when you've personally experienced them. Before Yuan Gang left the mountain, did you not teach him that he should never let down his guard against others? But what was the result? The smile on Han Yang's face gradually disappeared, and the sharp light in his eyes also gradually disappeared. He said indifferently, the world is very big, and it's not just Jade Capital Mountain or this place within the sect. There are many people in the world, and it's not just us who are from the same sect. It doesn't matter if the junior disciples don't understand and resent me. It's fine as long as they don't die outside because of these problems. Only when they're alive can they criticize me, blame me, and make up stories about me in private. Tan Yunqing looked at Han Yang, and slowly shook her head. You're too fond of doing things that are unconventional. Han Yang said indifferently, even though I'm going through these tests, I'm still very uneasy in my heart. It's not because of the inhumanity you've said, but because I'm afraid it's not enough. The tests for these disciples are all things that I can observe through simple observation when I'm teaching in the Cloud Peak. I don't know what they're thinking in their hearts, or whether there are any other flaws, and I have no intention of probing into their privacy and the secrets in their hearts. What I hope is that these clearly exposed flaws will alert them from the bottom of their hearts, and allow them to examine themselves, and deal with even more problems. 3 days passed quickly, and in the end, only a few people passed the test. Most people expressed their dissatisfaction with the contents of Han Yang's test. Before this, they really didn't think that it would actually be a test with such contents. Everyone now finally understood why before participating in the test, everyone had to first use a divine sense seal to ensure that the contents of the test would not be leaked. They also finally understood why, ever since Han Yang began presiding over the Dance Pavilion's test, all the people who participated in the test had kept it a secret and never leaked the contents of the test. Han Yang calmly looked at the group of young disciples in front of him. What? Do you feel that your opponents are too despicable, too shameless, too low, too insidious? He smiled. Believe me, in the future, when you really go out, you'll meet even more despicable, shameless, despicable, and insidious opponents than this. Even if you can't think of it, there's nothing that they can't do. Han Yang's eyes swept across the crowd. However, at that time, there will be no Great Law Hall's magic seal to protect you. You'll have to rely on yourself for everything. If you die, you die. It won't be like now, where you'll be sent to the gate of the Great Law Hall, and you'll have a chance to come back in the future. At that time, are you going to lie on the ground, struggle on your deathbed, and use the last of your strength to shout at your enemies? This is not fair, this is too despicable. If you have the ability, let's have a fair fight. When you're besieged by a group of enemies, are you going to tell them that if they have the ability, let's have a one-on-one fight? How many opponents do you think will agree? A junior disciple's lips moved. Although Han Yang didn't look at him, he still said, "What do you want to say? Just say it." That disciple clenched his teeth and said in a deep voice, "According to what you said, as long as we enter the dreamland and kill everyone we meet, we won't be deceived. If we encounter a group of enemies, we can immediately run away. Won't there be no problem?" Han Yang chuckled, "Kill everyone we meet? Then how will you find the space waymark that I left behind and leave the Great Law Hall within 3 days? You'll still be eliminated. With your cultivation, to find my space waymark with just your spiritual consciousness, 3 days is far from enough. You'll have to rely on the hints and help of some people in the dreamland to have a chance to pass the test." The few junior disciples who passed the test nodded subconsciously. It was because of this that they could find the space waymark within the time limit. The disciple who spoke before opened his mouth. Han Yang looked at him and said, "Be able to distinguish right from wrong, distinguish black from white, and not lose yourself when you can see the gray. Be clear-headed and still have a firm will. Only then can you walk out of the dreamland. The world is very big. Not everyone is good to you, not everyone is good to you, not everyone is good to you, but not everyone is evil. You have to use your eyes to see everything and use your heart to think. Ignorance and recklessness are not brave. Innocence that has not been exposed to evil is not good. Knowing clearly about the danger but still overcoming the fear in the heart, then it can be called brave. Knowing evil and evil but not doing it, then it can be called good." Han Yang suddenly laughed, "Let me make it clear in advance. For those who pass the test, if they choose to worship me as their teacher, in the following days, this kind of thing will be a common thing until you can reach my standard. Otherwise, these 3 days are just the beginning. However, I only teach my personal disciples this way. I will not interfere with how others teach their disciples." As Han Yang said this, he pointed to Tianxian and the others beside him and said, "So, you can also worship other people in my light dance pavilion as your teacher. As far as I know, their teaching methods are different from mine. Except for senior brother Tianbi of Qian Tian Palace, I am the only one. If you choose someone else, you don't have to suffer this pain. Today's test is the last lesson I will give you after you leave Cloud Peak. If anyone has a strong opinion, you all know Supreme Tian Fang next to me. In the absence of 6th uncle, he is temporarily in charge of the Law Hall. You can complain to him, and he will accept it." Han Yang said lightly, "As for why I teach you this lesson, there is no other reason than that you are my disciples, Xianmen Tianzong. As long as you cultivate diligently and don't waste time or the resources provided by the sect, you are destined to become the most outstanding talents of your generation in the vast land of the Divine Land. And it's too difficult for your enemies to defeat you in a fair and square manner. When people of the same generation fight fair and square, it is difficult for you to find opponents at your level. The danger you will face in the future will only be greater than today. The enemy's means and tricks will only be more despicable, shameless, insidious, and vicious. Because in a head-on fight, the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong are too strong." Chapter 11:11. In the light dance pavilion, Han Yang sat cross-legged in meditation. Tian Xian sat opposite him, a sheathed sword across his knees. He said seriously, "Senior brother Tian Shu, I really hope that you can seriously consider changing the way you teach your disciples. You are the best swordsman of our generation. Even Master said that in the same realm, his swordsmanship may not be better than yours. The disciples you teach, like Yuandu and the others, are all very outstanding. They are better than our disciples in cultivation. But because of your special teaching in other areas, many disciples do not dare to worship you as their master. This is undoubtedly a waste." Han Yang's expression was calm. As long as you do not mind, your disciples come to ask me for advice on pure Tao, I will not refuse, and I will not hold back. Like I said a long time ago, if others feel that they are ready and want to experience my special training here, they can come to me at any time. Or they can report to their master, and you can help them prepare. But as my disciples, I have to be responsible for them, although in your eyes, my standards are too strict. Slowly, Han Yang shook his head. The principle of gradual progress is not wrong, but it depends on whether it is effective. Like Sun Hanning, according to the time of the boundless world, she studied at Cloud Peak for 4 years. From the second year, I found her problem. Every time I went to Cloud Peak to teach, I would specially remind her. But until the 4th year, when she was ready to participate in the successor disciple test, she was still the same. I simmered her for more than 2 years, but she still did not change. Then I had to give her a strong medicine. I know that you will not do this, so I will be the bad guy. Otherwise, I really do not dare to imagine what the result will be if she goes out on her own in the future. Han Yang's voice was calm and steady. Yuan Gang, Tan Yunqing's disciple, to be honest, I admire him very much. His talent in swordsmanship is not low. I noticed it when he was studying at Cloud Peak. I even went to see his parents. They are also a pair of honest people, and they have taught a good child. But Yuan Gang himself was more interested in formations. In the end, he chose River Luo House. Although I felt it was a pity, I could only let him be. If it weren't for Hua Zhao's presence, Yuan Gang would have most likely died. A true death doesn't have a second chance. Tian Xian said in a deep voice, Sun Hanning may be unrepentant, but what about the others? Why did you use the same method? Senior Marshal Brother, do you know how hurtful your actions are? Especially in the successor disciple exam of the Light Dance Pavilion, it's very hurtful. Most of those disciples came with longing for the Light Dance Pavilion, and some of them even yearn for you, Brother Tian Shu. Han Yang's gaze became slightly solemn, and his voice became low. Being sad is better than losing your life in the future. Here, they can make mistakes, they can sum up their experience afterwards, they can resent me with lingering fear, they can be disappointed in me, they can abandon me like an old shoe, and join your sect. They can go to Sixth Uncle and Tan Yunqing to complain about me, and they can go to Master to complain about me, and let Master reprimand me. Because no matter what I do, they will not be in real danger, but in the face of a real enemy, they will always only have one life. Han Yang slowly closed his eyes. You always think that experiencing these things here will poison the minds of the disciples, and they will slide into darkness. But in my opinion, after experiencing these things here, we can always pay attention to their situation, guide them, and deal with them in time. When they go out and suddenly encounter such things, and see these dark existences, it is difficult to predict what will happen. Tian Xian said, Senior Brother Tian Shu, with all due respect, in addition to the problems you mentioned, for these disciples, it is because of these things that experience in the sect that their minds will be more seriously affected. After all, the sect is their home, and you are their elder. Han Yang did not open his eyes, and they were still closed. No matter how much reason is said, it is all empty, and the facts are the best standard to test the reason. Except for Sun Hanning, who is still in the recovery period and needs to continue to observe and guide, the disciples who have gone through my assessment over the years, whether they join your other sects or my own sect, have not gone astray. Instead, they become more and more mature like a quenched blade. It is still the old saying, it is good to know the evil and sin but not to do it. However, speaking of it, I have caused some trouble for you, and I want to thank you for dealing with the aftermath. Tian Xian slightly frowned. Senior Brother, I still feel that something is wrong. There was no problem before, but it does not mean that there will always be no problem in the future. Han Yang slightly smiled, and suddenly said something that seemed irrelevant. The place where the assessment is carried out is the Spreading Law Hall. Tian Xian was slightly stunned, and then he heard Han Yang continue to say lightly, you may not have noticed, because you are also one of them. Senior Brother Tian Shu, I. Tian Xian slightly frowned. Han Yang calmly said, the reason why the majority of the people can come out of the shadows is that from the beginning, their minds have already given birth to a hint that everything that is about to happen, the test is just a test, and not an irreversible reality. The spreading law hall's magical power restriction not only protects their actual safety, but also protects their minds. Speaking of this, the smile on Han Yang's face gradually disappeared. But, from a long time ago, I noticed a problem. Because of the existence of the life-protecting restriction, the effect of the spreading law hall on the disciples of the sect is getting weaker and weaker. Although they may be injured, they will never die. Even if they make a big mistake, or even implicate other companions, in the end, it is just an illusion. Although they will be injured, but in the battle between senior brother Lu Xia and senior brother Zhou, most of the true sun fire that he painstakingly cultivated was destroyed by senior brother Zhou's burning sun-breaking Yuan Qi. In fact, there is no irreparable injury. So, from a long time ago, I did not cultivate in the spreading law hall. I would rather go out to fight and face real danger. Of course, this is my personal decision. Even if it is my sect's disciples, I will not force them to do the same as me. Han Yang whispered, my assessment may be unexpected, but is it really that difficult? Among the people who did not pass, how many of them were eliminated because of the defects in their minds that they could not overcome? How many of them were slacking, thinking that the assessment is carried out in the spreading law hall, and they are in an absolutely safe state? How many of them are arrogant, thinking that as a disciple of the sect, the enemy does not dare to plot against them, do not dare to besiege them, do not dare to use insidious means to deal with them? Do they realize that perhaps many people are indeed afraid of the power of the sect, and do not dare to be enemies with them, but there are always those who take risks out of desperation and do not consider the consequences? Not to mention, when it comes to the critical moment of life and death, everyone can only care about what is in front of them to survive. At that time, who cares about which sect you are? At this time, they can only rely on themselves. Without the protection of the sect, and without the protection of the spreading law hall's magic power, death is death. Tian Xian's face turned slightly pale. Senior brother Tian Shu, be careful with your words. What you said just now is a bit too much. Han Yang looked calm, closed his eyes, shook his head, and did not continue to speak. Tian Xian lowered his head and also fell into silence. At this moment, Luo Qingwu's voice came into their ears, Tian Shu, come to the top floor to see master. Tian Xian looked at Han Yang with some worry. Han Yang opened his eyes, smiled, and shook his head, the time agreed with master has come. Next, I have to submit the results to master. If master rejects me, you don't have to worry anymore. On the top of Jade Capital Mountain, on the branches of the mysterious Sky Treasure Tree, Lin Feng's God of War doppelganger sat there silently, while Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger stood next to him. Lin Feng smiled slightly, how do you feel? Zhu Yi said, his intention is good, but his means are not appropriate. Junior sister allowed him to do the experiment, but he went a bit too extreme. First of all, this kind of test should not be done in the true disciple assessment. On the contrary, the true disciples who have been specially taught and are about to finish their apprenticeship are suitable to take this kind of test. Secondly, the specific details can be kept secret in order to be unexpected and targeted. For example, the specific methods of besieging, betraying, plotting, and deceiving cannot be disclosed, but the general situation should be made public. Tell the younger disciples that the opponents they will face will not fight the enemy in fair and square, but will use all kinds of sinister tricks to harm them. Then, the disciples will decide whether to participate in the assessment or not. Lin Feng did not express any opinion about Han Yang's approach and Zhu Yi's comments. He smiled noncommittally, let Xiao Wu's disciple handle it herself. Zhu Yi nodded, that's right. Lin Feng said, go and focus on cultivation. Hao Yang is dead, but his foundation is excellent. He was at the peak of void return in the past. Although it takes time and effort to cultivate, you may have the opportunity to improve this doppelganger to the Dao integration realm. The war between the two realms may come at any time. The more preparation you have, the more chances you will have. Zhu Yi answered, Master, please rest assured. I understand. As Lin Feng and Zhu Yi talked, on the peak of White Cloud Mountain where the Taishu Temple was located, Yan Nanlai, Lord Qing Yi, Lord Xian Yi, and the others silently looked up at the void in the sky. There, the Taishu Nine Heavens Imperial Court shone brightly. Above the Ninth Heavens Imperial Court, in the mysterious and indescribable brilliance, figures were faintly discernible. After a long time, a soft sigh came from the sky. The Nine Heavens Imperial Court disappeared, and 3 figures descended, returning to the peak of White Cloud Mountain. They were Lord Tai Yi, Shoichi Dashin, and Xianlin Taoist. Yan Nanlai looked at Lord Tai Yi, Master. Chapter 11-12. Facing the inquiring gazes of Yan Nanlai and the rest, Dao Master Daoyi, Shoichi Dashin, and Xianlin Taoist all shook their heads. No, we still can't reopen our spirit seas. Yan Nanlai, Dao Master Qing 1, and Dao Master Xian 1 nodded silently and didn't say anything else. It was originally a trial effort, so even if it didn't succeed, it was within expectations. It wasn't disappointing. It was just that it was a pity that the battle for the Netherworld Sea was delayed. Even without the Spirit Sea incident, the situation at the Netherworld Sea was still unknown. However, the gains and losses could only be considered in their hearts. Dao Master Qing 1 asked, what about the whereabouts of the Yuda clan? Can you confirm it? Shoichi Dashin shook his head and answered, still not. We can't confirm it. We already know about the matter at the Netherworld Sea. Dao Master Daoyi sighed softly. Even though we weren't able to keep the king of the underworld here, it's an acceptable result. Shoichi Dashin looked at Yan Nanlai and Dao Master Qing 1. Is the hunt for the remnants of the underworld hall still ongoing? Yan Nanlai nodded. That's right. The entire Divine Prefecture has been mobilized and is currently in progress. The harvest is quite great. Currently, most of the remaining remnants of the Underworld Hall have escaped into the battlefield of the Void. We and the cultivators of the other forces are also pursuing them in the battlefield of the Void. Even though the environment in the Void battlefield is complicated, making it much more difficult to pursue them, we still have a lot of clues from those who were captured previously. We're still pursuing them. Shoichi Dashin said, in that case, I think it's time to carry out the original plan. Dao Master Qing 1 nodded. Everything is ready. We're just waiting for you two to return. Without you two, the situation will be chaotic, and it'll be hard for me to grasp the overall situation. My original plan was to make all the preparations. If you two return in time, we'll act immediately. If you can't, don't act rashly. Although it's quite regrettable that we weren't able to reopen our spiritual seas, it's still a good thing that you've returned in time. After all, this is the best opportunity, and the chances of success are higher. Moreover, time waits for no one. The longer we delay, the worse the situation will become. Shoichi Dashin, it would be best if everything is ready. Speaking of which, it's my fault. Not only did I return empty-handed from the battle in space, I even caused the Haotian mirror to take longer to recover. Lord Tai shook his head and closed his eyes. That was something that could not be helped. Junior brother Zhengyi, you don't have to blame yourself. If we can delay it until the Haotian mirror completely recovers, then it's fine. But now, it seems that the situation is changing rapidly. I'm afraid that it'll be difficult for things to go as we wish, Dao Master Qingyi said. Since that's the case, the earlier the war between the two realms comes, the better. Although the king of the underworld is gravely injured, he will definitely recover gradually as time goes by. At that time, if he causes trouble again, it will inevitably cause many variables to arise. Dao Master Xian Yi was silent. After a long while, he said softly, do we really have to do this? Shoichi Dashin and Dao Master Qing Yi did not speak. They looked at Lord Tai together. Silently, Lord Tai said, this is the most beneficial plan for the Divine Land. The others nodded. Xianlin Taoist said, there's a small accident. Besides Wang Lin, the leader of Xianmen Tianzong's pursuit of the cultivators of the underworld hall is also Zhu Yi. He has the golden nirvana bridge of creation with him. If we go according to the original plan, I'm afraid it won't be very safe. Dao Master Qingyi said, I'll go. If you go alone, Zhu Yi has the golden nirvana bridge, so it's indeed not safe enough. Shoichi Daishin looked at Xianlin Taoist and Yun Yuanjun. The two of you, go with junior sister Qingyi and coordinate with her. Xianlin Taoist and Yun Yuanjun bowed and answered, yes, master. Dao Master Qingyi said, capturing the underworld hall's sub-hall master, King Dusher, will increase the success rate of the original plan. Yan Nanlai said, I've already informed junior brother Kai and junior sister Yu Yuan to get ready. If the plan succeeds, they will be ready at Taihua Mountain. At that time, our temple will rely on Taihua Mountain to overlook the infinite wasteland and seize the initiative in the war between the two worlds. Dao Master Qingyi nodded, his eyes still closed. He looked at Shoichi Daishin and Dao Master Xian Yi and said, Junior brother Zhengyi will go to the infinite wasteland and be ready to support junior sister Qingyi. Junior brother Xian Yi will stay with me to guard White Cloud Mountain. If necessary, I will take the Haotian mirror to the infinite wasteland. In that case, White Cloud Mountain will be in your hands. Shoichi Daishin and Dao Master Xian Yi nodded in unison. A bright Haotian mirror light slowly floated into the sky. Everyone looked up at the Haotian mirror light. Dao Master Qingyi said slowly, if the war between the two worlds breaks out again, the people will definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. Fortunately, we are in charge this time and can place the main battlefield on the infinite wasteland. You guys go. Dao Master Daoyi sighed softly. Dao Master Qingyi, Dao Master Xianlin, and Yun Yuanjun nodded in unison. Let's go. In the Yingxi, on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, Lin Feng's newly refined avatar was staring at the heavenly scarlet golden bead in a daze. Inside the golden bead, the divine soul of the zenith heaven asked, Master Lin, the other party didn't seem to be able to reopen his spirit sea. Lin Feng nodded. That's right. They didn't succeed. As he said that, Lin Feng was still staring at the heavenly scarlet golden bead in a daze. Although the zenith heaven was curious, it was inappropriate for him to ask. It feels a little strange. Why do I feel uneasy? Lin Feng frowned slightly and shook his head before sitting down cross-legged again. Meanwhile, on Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng's main body left the sutra repository and traveled through the void toward the Yingxi. After entering the Yingxi, Lin Feng shuttled through the layers of illusory seas and communicated with his mind. A moment later, a huge immortal mountain appeared before him. Tens of millions of transparent jade tablets floated in the distorted space around the immortal mountain. Each jade tablet was extremely huge, about half an acre in size. They were rectangular in appearance and stacked on top of each other. At the same time, they were spread out flat, like a sphere, wrapping the huge immortal mountain within. Lin Feng pointed with his finger and the tens of millions of transparent jade plates began to move, opening up a gap for him to enter. This huge immortal mountain was naturally one of the three mountains of the Yingxi, Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng landed on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain and walked all the way to the jade spring at the foot of the immortal mountain. Lin Feng looked at the two black shadows that were silently floating in the spring. He conjured hand seals with both hands and pointed at the two black shadows. The two black shadows in the spring suddenly shook at the same time and floated out of the water. They hovered in midair and emitted a vast fluctuation of magic power. The black shadow on the left was a pure black long banner that emitted a faint purple light. There was a terrifying scene embroidered on the banner. An extremely huge strange snake was entrenched in a pitch-black swamp. The strange snake had a snake's body and a human's face. It had a total of 9 faces that looked no different from human faces. The expressions on the 9 faces were cold and vicious. Their 18 eyes were filled with resentment, making them look extremely ferocious and terrifying. They opened their mouths and spurted out streams of black fog and black water. The heaven and earth spiritual chi of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain withered the moment it came into contact with the black fog and poisonous water. Its vigorous vitality was on the verge of being extinguished. The terrifying strange snake on the black banner was the Xiang Lu. With a thought from Lin Feng, the black fog and poisonous water could not spread outside and were all retracted onto the banner. The tragic scene of living beings being in misery and desolation was like an illusion. The banner was a Dharma treasure, the Xiang Lu banner, that Lin Feng had refined from the corpse of the great sage Xiang Lu when he went to Tianhuang mainland and killed the great sage Xiang Lu. The Xiang Lu race's most potent poison was its poisonous blood. In the ancient times, there was a great sage Xiang Lu who was killed in the Dharma-ending realm. After his death, the poisonous blood he left behind turned a corner of Tianhuang mainland into a dead land. Even after a long period of time, it was still difficult to completely remove it. It could be said that demons like the Xiang Lu would leave endless poison even after their death. Even Lin Feng had to spend a lot of effort to properly deal with the great sage Xiang Lu's corpse and refine it into such a Dharma treasure. The power of the Dharma treasure was also satisfactory. Although it had just been completed and was only at the spirit nurturing level, its power was already quite extraordinary. Beside the Xiang Lu banner was a dark gray armor. It looked rather inconspicuous and was rather thick, but it also made people feel that it was very cumbersome. Wearing the armor was like wearing a suit of armor made of polished rocks. However, the defense power of the armor was absolutely astonishing because it was refined by Lin Feng using the corpse of the ancestral crocodile great sage, who was at the star-soul integration stage. The ancestral crocodile was an elite among the mixed-blood dragons. Its rock armor gathered the power of the stars and the earth as the pivot, and merged the power of the earth and water elements together. The power of the earth element was thick and solid, while the power of the water element kept flowing to deflect the opponent's attacks. Even among the dragons, only the armored black dragon could compete with the ancestral crocodile in terms of defense under the same cultivation realm. In terms of pure physical strength, the ancestral crocodile was also comparable to the armored black dragon and the yellow dragon. Not only could the ancestral crocodile divine armor protect the wearer very well, but it could also increase the wearer's physical strength, further increasing the wearer's strength. Although it was also a spirit-nurturing level Dharma treasure like the Xiang Lu banner, it could also unleash power beyond expectations in the right hands. Lin Feng looked at the two Dharma treasures, nodded, and put them away. Then, he left Yingzhou Immortal Mountain and returned to the colossal world. On the way, Lin Feng received a report from Zhu Yi. Master, we've captured the Underworld Hall cultivators and made an unexpected discovery. We've received news about little junior brother's parents. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. So sudden. Previously, the king of the underworld didn't reveal anything. When you captured the other Underworld Hall cultivators, you didn't receive any news either. Is the news true? Zhu Yi answered, I'm afraid it's true. It seems that one of the Underworld Hall's 10 Yama kings, King Chujiang, accidentally encountered little junior brother's parents when he escaped into the void battlefield to avoid our pursuit. He wanted to use them as a protective talisman and bargaining chip, so he captured little junior brother's parents. Lin Feng asked, can you find him? There's a clear clue. Third junior brother and I are focusing on finding him. Zhu Yi said, however, it's indeed difficult to find someone in the void battlefield. We still need some time. Lin Feng raised his head slightly and smiled. We've finally found him. Tianhao's family can finally be reunited. In that case, let's inform him. Although searching for someone in the void battlefield is like searching for a needle in a haystack, and it won't be enough no matter how many people we throw in blindly, since there's a clear clue, having one more person will increase our chances. Among you and your brothers, apart from little Lin, Tianhao is the one most familiar with the void battlefield. Zhu Yi answered, yes, master. I'll contact little junior brother right away. Chapter 11-13. After cutting off contact with Zhu Yi, Lin Feng felt a little emotional. Back then, Shi Tianhao's grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, had entered the void battlefield in order to prepare some good things for his newborn grandson. Shi Tianhao's parents, Shi Xiling, and his wife, had also entered the void battlefield in search of their father. This had led to Shi Tianhao being harmed by Shi Tianyi's family and having his sovereign-level Dao foundation snatched away, narrowly escaping death. After that, Shi Xiling and his wife had successfully escaped from the void battlefield. However, they were ambushed by the Yu clan, which was close to Shi Tianyi. They had no choice but to retreat to the void battlefield to seek refuge. Since then, they had never returned. On the other hand, Shi Tianhao's grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, had returned to the vast Thousand Domains. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about what had happened before. When he found out that his son and daughter-in-law had been lost in the void battlefield, he was extremely anxious. After the Battle of West Hill City, the Shi clan's former head, Shi Wu, and Shi Tianhao's grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, had entered the void battlefield to continue searching for Shi Xiling and his wife. Shi Tianhao himself had entered the void battlefield many times to search for them, but to no avail. Xianmen Tianzong, other cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty, and even experts from other forces who were on good terms with Xianmen Tianzong were all helping to keep an eye out for traces of Shi Xiling and his wife if they entered the void battlefield. However, without a clear lead, searching for someone in the void battlefield, one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan, was like fishing a needle out of a haystack. To the current Shi Tianhao, if there was anything he was worried about, it would be the whereabouts of his parents. Now that there was finally clear news, Lin Feng felt happy and gratified for him. However, I still feel that it's too much of a coincidence. Although he was happy, Lin Feng still had some doubts in his heart. It would have been fine if he had been secretly imprisoned by the Underworld Hall, but it just so happened that when we were chasing after the Underworld Hall cultivators accidentally ran into him and captured him. Lin Feng shook his head slowly and continued to return to Jade Capital Mountain. After returning to the mountain, Lin Feng and the Brontosaurus clone continued to cultivate on the 3rd floor of the Scripture Pagoda. Meanwhile, the divine god of battle clone sat on the mystic treasure tree with his eyes closed to cultivate. After an unknown period of time, Lin Feng's divine battle clone suddenly sensed something and looked in the direction of a cave abode on Jade Capital Mountain. Suddenly, there was a flash of brilliance in the cave abode. It was like an illusion, changing unpredictably. The lingering clouds seemed to have condensed into a sparkling water surface. On the surface of the water, there was a reflection of a full moon. It was waxing, and it was constantly changing. Lin Feng suddenly understood. Shihao has come out of seclusion. As the brilliance flickered, it gradually dimmed. Slowly, it returned to the cave abode. However, looking at the cave abode, one could still feel the mysterious changes between real and fake. It was difficult for ordinary people to tell what was going on. They always felt that the scene before was fake, or perhaps the current scene was fake. The brilliance never returned. This cave abode was Miao Shihao's residence. After the brilliance disappeared, the door of the cave abode opened. A fair-skinned, handsome young man wearing a violet robe with golden edges slowly walked out and walked toward the mystic treasure tree. Unlike his usual enchanting and feminine appearance, the current Miao Shihao's expression was calm and dignified. He exuded a carefree aura and a sense of loneliness. His entire person seemed to be worried like the moon, like an elegant young master, or like an immortal who had descended from the moon into the mortal world. On his forehead, there was a pattern that looked like a full moon that was constantly changing. It changed from a full moon to a waning moon, then from a waning moon to a crescent moon. In the end, it almost disappeared, but it reappeared the next moment. It kept increasing and gradually became a full moon. Although his facial features were no different from that sissy, his temperament was completely different. At this moment, Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao, who was walking toward him. It was the same feeling he had when he saw one of the 4 ancient heroes in the Taishu Temple in the Spirit Sea. Miao Shihao came in front of Lin Feng and smiled. He cupped his hands at Lin Feng. "Sect Master, it's been a long time. How have you been?" Although he was smiling, he did not have his usual delicate and charming feeling. Instead, there was a hint of coldness and sadness. Lin Feng looked at him and nodded. Shihao, it's been a long time. Congratulations on achieving the primordial spirit and identifying your true self. Miao Shihao replied with a smile, if I hadn't entered Xianmen Tianzong and received your care, I wouldn't have been able to achieve the primordial spirit so quickly. You're still you, Miao Shihao. There won't be any changes. It's just that the title of True Lord Mirror Flower will be changed to Dao Lord Mirror Flower. Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao. However, forgive me for my doubts. How should I address your previous life? Moonlight Sky, or the Water Moon Illusory Mirror? The Water Moon Illusory Mirror was the personal magic treasure of Yu Huantian's disciple, Tao Master Water Moon, Li Jingyuan. However, it disappeared along with Li Jingyuan. When it was still active, it was already a magic treasure of the incarnation level. Miao Shihao said lightly, my previous life was the moon in the mirror. The moon in the mirror was the name of the primordial spirit of the Water Moon Illusory Mirror. Lin Feng sighed. Unless it's a last resort, a Mahayana-level Dharma treasure will not be reincarnated. I don't want to stay in White Cloud Mountain for a moment longer. Even if I lose the ability to live as long as heaven and earth after reincarnation, I have to face the erosion of the mortal world. In the end, I can't achieve the primordial spirit and return to dust, but it's still better than the days in Taishu Temple. Miao Shihao said indifferently. Li Jingyuan is long dead. I only hate that place. Lin Feng nodded and didn't ask any more questions. I have no intention of probing into your past, Shihao. It's just that I have some doubts about Taishu Temple. I need Shihao to dispel them for me. Please don't take offense. Lin Feng really had no intention of probing into Miao Shihao's past. Anyway, it couldn't be anything good. The simplest point was that in his previous life, the Dharma treasure Water Moon Illusory Mirror was not refined by moonlight heaven. However, after the Dharma treasure's primordial spirit had a body of its own, it looked exactly like moonlight heaven. This was a very problematic thing. Miao Shihao's resentment towards Taishu Temple could be seen to be all-encompassing. It even included the original owner of the Dharma treasure, Li Jingyuan, in his previous life. However, Lin Feng could tell from Miao Shihao's words that his feelings towards Li Jingyuan were very complicated. Miao Shihao answered, Sect leader, please speak. As long as it's beneficial to our sect, I'll tell you everything I know. When I was reincarnated, I paid a price, so my memories of my previous life are incomplete. I can only recover them after I achieve the primordial spirit. Previously, after achieving the primordial spirit, I immediately went into seclusion to do this. Now, I've finally done it. I've received a lot of kindness from the sect. Now, it's time to repay the sect and sect leader. Actually, even if it's between the moon and the mirror and Taishu Temple, there's nothing that can't be discussed. Lin Feng first asked, how long will it take for the Haotian mirror to recover to its full state? As a Dharma treasure nurtured by the vast thousand worlds, if the Haotian mirror recovered to its full state, the entire vast thousand worlds would be shaken. Any human cultivator who had achieved the primordial spirit or a great demon with an immortal demon's soul would be able to feel it. However, no one outside of Taishu Temple knew how far the Haotian mirror had progressed during the recovery process. It was difficult to accurately calculate. Miao Shihao answered, since the last war between the two worlds, the Haotian mirror has not been damaged, nor has it been subjected to any strong suppression attacks. According to what I learned before I was reincarnated, it should be about 100 years from now. There may be some deviation, but it shouldn't be too big. Lin Feng pondered and said, that time in the Sea of Stars should have delayed the recovery of the Haotian mirror, but overall, it should still be about 100 years. By the way, Shihao, I learned some things during my trip to the Netherworld Sea. Lin Feng flicked his finger and a light image flew into Miao Shihao's glabella. Only then did I know that Taishu Temple had been in conflict since ancient times. Miao Shihao looked through the image in his mind and nodded. Dao Venerate's Scarlet Sun was not good at scheming. It was a pity that his sincerity was wasted. Even I don't know what Yan Xinghe was thinking. However, I can be sure that he placed great importance on the future path of Taishu Temple. After Dao Venerate's Scarlet Sun died in ancient times, the entire Taishu Temple tried to downplay his life. One of the main reasons was that Yan Xinghe wanted to establish the internal policies of Taishu Temple. After all, even after Dao Venerate's Scarlet Sun left White Cloud Mountain, there were still many disciples in Taishu Temple who followed the conservative policies of ancient times. As for whether Yan Xinghe had other thoughts, I'm not sure. If he didn't take the initiative to express it, others wouldn't be able to tell. Therefore, I won't make any wild guesses. Miao Shihao's tone was calm and cold. Although one could tell the difference between his opinion of Wen Qiang and Yan Xinghe from the way he addressed Yan Xinghe, in order to avoid misleading Lin Feng, he spoke his mind and did not make any subjective guesses. During the reign of the king of the underworld, under Yan Xinghe's leadership, the conservative ideology of ancient times in Taishu Temple gradually died out. The radical ideology of ancient times also became the only path. Lin Feng said, "Now, the conservative and radical factions in Taishu Temple seem to have been formed from the radical faction of ancient times." Miao Shihao nodded. "That's right. However, strictly speaking, there were actually two major splits." "Oh, two?" Lin Feng's interest was piqued. "What do you mean?" Miao Shihao explained, "The radical faction in Taishu Temple naturally doesn't need to be mentioned. Within the conservative faction, there are actually different factions with regards to the situation in the Divine Land and Taishu Temple's internal position and actions. Generally speaking, there are three factions. The first faction is the purest conservative faction. They are the most rational and the least emotional. They prioritize raising the strength of the human race and eliminate any factors that might cause harm to the human race. They do not consider other rights or wrongs, only looking at the results and not the means. For the time being, they can be called the extreme conservative faction." Lin Feng pondered. "Most of the time, such people are the most dangerous." Chapter 11:14. Miao Shihao said, "Currently, among the experts of the Taishu Temple, Daoist Lord Tai and Yan Nanlai, two generations of temple masters, are both extremely conservative. Other than that, there is also Fu Yunkong, one of the members of the Grand Elders Association. The second faction can be called the Radical Conservative Faction, which is the radical faction of the conservatives. Among the experts of Taishu Temple, the leader of this faction is Dao Master Qing Yi. Apart from them, members of the Supreme Elders Association, Dao Master Qing Yi's disciple Yun Yuanjin, Dao Master Yu Yuan, and Dao Master Qing Ning are also of this faction." Miao Shihao's lips curled into a cold smile. In the eyes of Dao Master Qing Yi and the rest, Taishu Temple can choose not to be the ruler like the human emperor, but they must ensure that Taishu Temple is the strongest force in the Divine Land. They must ensure that the situation of the human race is under Taishu Temple's control. If there are any unexpected changes, Taishu Temple has the ability to deal with it in time. In their minds, only Taishu Temple is trustworthy. Only Taishu Temple can uphold the righteous path of the human world and help the Divine Land. They cannot trust anyone else. If one day there is a force that Taishu Temple cannot control, they must suppress and weaken it for the sake of safety." Lin Feng pondered, saying in a low voice, "After the ancient era's conservative faction died out, the ancient era's radical faction under the leadership of Yan Xinghe split into these two schools of thought. This should be the first of the two major splits that you mentioned, Shihao. After that, more radical people emerged from the radical conservative faction, forming the current radical faction. This is the second major split?" Miao Shihao nodded his head. "That's right. The current radical faction, tracing back to its source, actually came from the radical faction within the conservative faction within the conservative faction. It wasn't that there was a division between the conservative faction and the radical faction, and then the conservative faction was divided internally. There was a period of time where the radical faction within the Void Temple held the absolute advantage, causing some of the people's thoughts to become even more radical. A thought sprouted within the radical conservative faction of Taishu Temple. They say that if I become the ruler of the Divine Land, it will be more beneficial to fight against Infinite Wasteland. Since I am the strongest, I should be the ruler." Lin Feng smiled. "That's the thinking of the radical faction in Taishu Temple. Miao Shihao said, "That's right, this time's division has given rise to the current radical faction of the Void Temple. The current leader of the radical faction, most of the top experts of the Divine Continent know, is Tao Master Zhengyi, who also belongs to the radical faction of the Void Temple's Supreme Elder, his direct disciple Kuang Heng, as well as Tao Master Xianlin and Wu Mengqi. As for the conservatives, apart from the ultra-conservatives and the radical conservatives, there is a third faction that was slowly formed. Its influence is not as great as the previous two divisions. You can call it the neutral conservative faction. Its current representatives are Tao Master Xian Yi and Grand Elder Kai Fengzhou. Miao Shihao explained, the ideology of this faction is between the ultra-conservatives and the radical conservatives. When the forces that can challenge Taishu Temple only exist in their imagination, they are inclined towards the ultra-conservatives. But when such forces really appear, they are inclined towards the radical conservatives. Lin Feng raised his head slightly. So, it seems that the neutral conservative faction in Taishu Temple is inclined towards the radical conservatives. The image he sent to Miao Shihao just now also briefly explained the various changes in the Divine Land during the days when Miao Shihao had been in seclusion. Miao Shihao already had a better understanding of the situation. He immediately nodded and said, "The possibility is very high." The general policy of the conservative faction is actually the product of the compromise between the three factions within the conservative faction. Moreover, this general policy itself has been fine-tuned many times. In addition, there are 3 points that we need to pay attention to. First, everyone has their own ideas. Therefore, different people in the same faction will often have different opinions on the same matter. In the same faction, there may be people with deep schemes, but there may also be people with a straightforward character. As he spoke, Miao Shihao raised 3 fingers. He curled up one finger and then put away the second finger. Second, the 3 factions within the conservative faction actually change frequently. And when the leader changes, it usually means that the general policy of the conservative faction will also be fine-tuned accordingly. Third, people's standpoint may change at different times and under different circumstances, but this is rare. He looked at Lin Feng and said, "It is very likely that Shoichi Dashin and Tao Master Qing Yi are already extremely hostile to our faction and you, Sect Master. Tao Master Xian Yi's standpoint is also likely to be on their side. Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, Wu Mengqi, Yun Yuanjin, Tao Master Yu Yuan, Tao Master Qing Ning, and Kai Fengzhou should also be on the same side. Under such circumstances, we have already formed an absolute majority advantage among the high-level experts of Taishu Temple. Even if Tao Master Tai Yi and Yen Nanlai have other ideas, they can only reserve their opinions. It is the same for Fu Yunkong. Sect Master, you guessed that when you first entered the desolate ancient star ocean, Taishu Temple already had a unified opinion. It should be more or less accurate." When Lin Feng heard this, he did not answer. Instead, he fell into deep thought. Tao Master Tai Yi, Yen Nanlai, Fu Yunkong, the extreme conservatives. I'm afraid they might not have given in because of their reservations. Miao Shihao gave Lin Feng a strange look, but did not say anything. Lin Feng came back to his senses. He looked at Miao Shihao again and asked, "After Tao Master Tai Yi was injured back then, he has been recuperating in the White Cloud Mountain. He rarely fought with others. What is his situation now?" Tao Master Tai Yi's foundation of the Great Tao was injured by Yuhuang Tianhai in the previous war between the two worlds. His divine arts and magic power have fallen back to the peak of the Dharma-ending realm. It's hard for him to recover. Miao Shihao's expression was solemn. However, he should still be able to activate the Great Tao collapse. It's just that his body is unable to endure the damage from the Great Tao collapse. Once he uses this final method, he will die together with the enemy. To be more precise, before he kills the enemy, he kills himself first. As Sect Master told me just now, the current leader of the dragon race, Tenryu Zhen, has successfully gone through the middle tribulation. His cultivation has reached the middle tribulation stage. For Taishu Temple, this is a very significant impact. Other than the growth of Tenryu Gen's divine arts and demonic power, Tao Master Tai Yi is unable to use his own life to perish together with Tenryu Gen. If Tenryu Gen does not take the initiative to attack the White Cloud Mountain, then other than the Haotian Mirror, Taishu Temple has no other methods that can do anything to Tenryu Gen. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched slightly. After hearing Miao Shihao's description of the Taishu Taoists' method of perishing together with the enemy, he naturally made some connections in his heart. With this method, if there are no proper countermeasures, Tao Master Tai Yi can be said to be invincible in the Dharma-ending realm. Lin Feng laughed and shook his head. In the legend, I can't beat you, but I can kill you. Ha, my disciple Little Yan has such a skill, which gives many people headaches. But now, it's me who has to prevent others from playing such a trick on me. Among the 4 heroes under Lin Feng, the strongest was now recognized as his second disciple, Zhu Yi. However, this did not refer to personal magical power, but to the Golden Nirvana Bridge, a magic treasure of creation that Zhu Yi carried with him. However, the combination of Zhu Yi and the Golden Nirvana Bridge was strong, and many people had no choice but to accept it. After all, magic treasures were also a part of a cultivator's strength in actual combat. No one would be stupid enough to not use a treasure in a life-and-death battle. But against Xiao Yan, it made people feel helpless and annoyed. It was clear that your magical power was above him, but he still had a high possibility of taking you down with him, paving the bottom of his coffin, so that you had no choice but to give up the idea of being his enemy. For a top expert, it was really a very vexing thing. Because this was a completely unreasonable thing. If you can withstand this attack from me, then I lose. If you can't withstand this attack from me, then I will directly blast you to death. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng. Sect leader, I have to remind you that other than this trump card, the Grand One Sovereign's own magical power is also extremely powerful. Among the remaining 4 Great Void Elders of the same generation, there is no doubt that he is the strongest. Lin Feng nodded. This seat can predict this. After the Taishu Taoist and Wen Qiyang, he is the 3rd strongest expert in the history of Taishu Temple, surpassing countless seniors. In the previous war between the 2 worlds, before he was injured by Yuhuang Tianhai, he was at his peak condition and could be said to be the number 1 expert in the Divine Land. His lips curled up into a smile. He also possesses the divine light of creation. That's right. Miao Shihao said, and not only is his cultivation realm profound, the Grand One Sovereign's combat prowess at the same cultivation realm is something that very few in the history of Taishu Temple can compare to. Slowly, Lin Feng nodded, a look of contemplation in his eyes. Miao Shihao paused for a moment before continuing, Sect leader, you sent the Shushan Immortal Heaven Sword into destruction, severing the Immortal Heaven and achieving the Heaven Punishing Sword. This matter should be the key to the unity of opinion within Taishu Temple. Because after the Battle of Shushan, you and my sect will truly have the ability to resist Taishu Temple. Your Heaven Punishing Sword is extremely ferocious and contains the intent to destroy the world. This will definitely cause the people of Taishu Temple to feel uneasy. And after you seal this sword and refine it again, it will further cause them to feel enmity towards you. Lin Feng smiled. This is to be expected. After all, I can't stand still just because they don't like it. Some things must be done. If there is a battle after the war between the 2 worlds, there is nothing more to say. Everyone will just have to rely on their own abilities. Miao Shihao shook his head and stared at Lin Feng's eyes. Sect leader, you and my sect are now very likely to be recognized by Taishu Temple as an unstable power, or even a disadvantageous power. Lin Feng's eyes flickered a little. Oh. What are unstable powers and disadvantageous powers? Disadvantageous powers are easy to understand. They are not beneficial to the overall situation of the human race and the development of the Divine Land. Or they are not beneficial to the powers that we unite to fight against the war between the 2 worlds. For example, the King of the Underworld and the Underworld Hall. Lin Feng asked with interest, how do you explain unstable powers? Are you unable to determine if they are beneficial or not, and need to continue observing in the upcoming war between the 2 worlds? Miao Shihao shook his head slowly. Looking at Lin Feng, he said word by word, in the previous war between the two worlds, the top sect that Taishu Temple identified as an unstable power was the Tempest Temple. Hearing this, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. Oh. That's interesting. Chapter 11:15. Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao. From what I know, one of the main reasons why the Yuhuang Celestial Sea invaded the Divine Land back then and attacked the Great Thunderclap Temple was because the Nether Empress died in the hands of an esteemed monk of the Great Thunderclap Temple. Is that not the case? The Nether Empress was rumored to be the Empress of the Yuhuang Celestial Sea. She was also a powerful greater demon. Miao Shihao nodded. That's the main reason, but there's more to it. Back then, the Taishu Temple was the first to discover the whereabouts of the Nether Empress. They then informed the Great Thunderclap Temple. Lin Feng looked at him. Yu Huang and her husband were deeply in love. Back then, the entire Heaven Primal world knew about this. It's impossible for the Great Thunderclap Temple to not know the consequences of them killing the Nether Empress. Although the Taishu Temple leaked the news and even instigated it, the Nether Empress' death was ultimately the doing of the Great Thunderclap Temple. They should have been mentally prepared for the wrath of the Yuhuang Celestial Sea. Miao Shihao slowly shook his head. The Great Thunderclap Temple didn't expect such an ending at all. There's one thing that the Taishu Temple knew but the Great Thunderclap Temple didn't know. When the Taishu Temple informed the Great Thunderclap Temple about the whereabouts of the Nether Empress, there's one thing they didn't say. Lin Feng slightly furrowed his brows, hearing what you said, connecting the events before and after, could it be? Miao Shihao enunciated each word slowly. During the war between the two worlds, the Nether Empress was about to give birth. Lin Feng inclined his head and mumbled to himself, as expected. Regardless of humans or demons, when a female is pregnant, their strength would be greatly weakened. At the same time, they would also be weaker. Some injuries that normally wouldn't be fatal might very well claim their lives. And this problem would reach its peak during childbirth. Miao Shihao replied, I'm not too clear on the specifics. I only know that Nether Empress was temporarily hiding in a dimensional realm. The powerhouses of the Great Thunderclap Monastery who didn't know the situation chose to seal her away. Their original intention was probably to trap her there so that she wouldn't be able to participate in the war between the two worlds. But, a dimensional realm originally has a defensive law world. When this defensive law world resists the Great Lane Temple seal, both sides are separated by the power of a dimensional realm. Because of this, the powerhouses of the Great Lane Temple weren't aware of Nether Empress' exact situation. Later on, Queen Nether and her guards broke out of the encirclement and disappeared. Miao Shihao said in a soft voice, the cultivators of the Great Thunderclap Monastery should have searched through that dimensional realm and obtained some clues. Once they realized that there was a problem, they immediately fled far away. But not long after, the enraged Yuhuang Tianhai stepped into the Great Thunderclap Monastery. As for whether Nether Empress died from exhaustion during the confrontation with the defensive law world, or if she met with an accident while breaking out of the encirclement, we don't know. Taishu Temple's knowledge of what happened after the incident is rather limited. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng. In particular, we don't know what happened to the child between Yuhuang Tianhai and Nether Empress. However, according to our conjectures, for Yuhuang Tianhai to be so furious, it's very likely that both his wife and child died. Lin Feng didn't say anything and sank into deep thought. That was because he suddenly thought of another matter. That was the mysterious strong practitioner who had once ascended the Wudong forest and injured the Wudong Tree Emperor. Back then, Lin Feng had thought that this person was not only familiar with Xiuhua Yudu, but she was also related to the entire Yudu race. The great Phoenix sage knew about her relationship with the Yudu race, and the news came from the vast land of the Divine Continent. However, even the most well-informed Taishu Temple in the Divine Land didn't know about the background of that mysterious strong practitioner. In that case, the only human power that could have leaked the information to the Phoenix race and the Divine Wudong Tree clan was the Great Thunderclap Monastery, whose inheritance had been severely severed because of the battle back then. Back then, Great Thunderclap Monastery had suffered a great calamity, and even their own records were severely lacking, making it hard for them to make up for it. A lot of secret information had probably been completely buried in the long river of history along with the deaths of the people involved. From the looks of it now, that mysterious strong practitioner was most likely Empress Yu. What had happened in the Wudong forest back then was a joint operation between her and Shuahua Yudu, the sister-in-law and sister-in-law. During the war between the two worlds, Great Thunderclap Monastery had ambushed her place of seclusion. After she had broken out of the encirclement, the cultivators of Great Thunderclap Monastery might have discovered some clues. Even though they hadn't informed Taishu Temple, to prevent the Phoenix race and the divine Wudong Tree clan from joining the battle, they had leaked the information to the Phoenix Great Sage. Lin Feng pondered in his heart. If Empress Yu is that mysterious strong practitioner, the clues from before are all connected. The only problem is that if the Enchantress and Uncle Heavenly Wolf are both her disciples, then the Enchantress and Uncle Heavenly Wolf should have more information and clues about the Yudu race in their hands. It shouldn't just be the second scroll of Heavenly Tao Demon Scriptures, Primordial Chaos Demon Canon. But this point doesn't seem to be reflected. According to the information I have now, Great God Golden Rock has been working hard to develop the various ruins in Yuhuang Celestial Sea, and he has gained quite a lot. Could it be that the Enchantress and the rest are purposely hiding their strength? Thinking about it, Lin Feng slowly shook his head and looked at Miao Shihao. I finally understand why Taishu Temple took the initiative to start the war between the two worlds when they didn't seem to have complete confidence. Miao Shihao said, "That's right. Everything has been calculated. It's precisely during this period when Empress Yu is pregnant. Even though Yu Huang Celestial Sea is domineering and arrogant, he loves his wife deeply. Now that Empress Yu is pregnant, he naturally won't take the initiative to start a war. No matter if it's from the perspective of feelings or from the perspective of eliminating future worries, it's the same. However, to Taishu Temple, it's most advantageous to start a war at this time, even though they aren't completely confident." Lin Feng smiled. It's only at this time that their plan can be carried out. Otherwise, with Yu Huang Celestial Sea's personality, they will most likely focus on White Cloud Mountain and fight them. From a purely strategic point of view, it is indeed more advantageous for the human race to wage war in the Tempest Temple. Lin Feng's gaze was somewhat cold. After all, the people of the Taishu Temple have the ability to move the Great Thunderclap Temple's peak state Yin Yang Grand Formation to the Great Thunderclap Temple and attack Yuhuang Heaven Sea together with the Haotian Mirror. When the battle broke out on White Cloud Mountain, it was difficult for the Great Tempest Monastery to move the Vairocana Formation at its peak to White Cloud Mountain. The golden bodies of the top 10 disciples were already compatible with the terrain of the Great Tempest Monastery's mountain range. Fighting in the Great Layin Temple can maximize the combat power of the human cultivators. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. As for whether the monks of the Great Thunderclap Temple are willing or not, that's not within Taishu Temple's consideration. Miao Shihao said, Taishu Temple doesn't trust the Great Thunderclap Temple. Before the war between the two worlds, Taishu Temple received news that the Great Thunderclap Temple had come into contact with the demon race and attempted to impart the Buddhist teachings to them. Maybe the Great Thunderclap Temple had the heart to deliver all living things from suffering and be inclusive, but this wasn't something that the people of Taishu Temple could accept. In particular, the extreme conservative faction led by the Grand One Taoist Lord could not tolerate this. As for the radical faction and the radical conservative faction, they were naturally happy to see the Great Thunderclap Temple go against the demon race in the war between the two worlds. So naturally, the Great Thunderclap Temple was classified as an unstable faction by Taishu Temple at that time. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng. The definition of an unstable faction by Taishu Temple doesn't mean that it's impossible to determine if it's beneficial or not and that it needs to be followed up in the war between the two worlds. Instead, it's directly designed to exhaust the demon race in the war between the two worlds, using the unstable faction as much as possible to exhaust the demon race's strength, thus contributing to the human race's victory in the war between the two worlds. Lin Feng had a faint smile on his face. I understand. To put it simply, I'm not sure if you'll contribute or not, and whether it'll be beneficial to the human race. So I'm helping you, ensuring that you'll definitely contribute, and you'll definitely do your best, your utmost. As for what you think, that's not important. Miao Shihao nodded. That's right. That's exactly what I mean. The follow-up observation of an unstable faction is the follow-up observation after the war between the two worlds. If it's an unfavorable faction, they'll be eliminated before the war between the two worlds. If Taishu Temple determines that it's too difficult to eliminate them, and that it'll cause serious internal friction, which will be detrimental to the war between the two worlds, then they'll also treat the unfavorable faction as an unstable faction, sending them into the war between the two worlds. They'll try to make them exhaust the demon race, and after the war ends, they'll eliminate them. Lin Feng shook his head lightly. Back then, during the war between the two worlds, Great Thunderclap Temple might not have the intention of killing Yuhuang Heaven Sea in order to not completely anger them. However, even though they knew that Yuhuang Heaven Sea's reverse scale, they still went to stop her. Clearly, they still have to contribute in the war between the two worlds, but they have a bottom line to protect themselves. He looked towards Miao Shihao. In that case, if it is a relatively stronger power, in a situation where the Void Temple does not have the confidence to win, the difference between an unstable power and a disadvantageous power is, in a situation where their vitality is greatly injured after the battle, will the Void Temple further settle accounts? Miao Shihao nodded. In the previous war between the two worlds, Great Thunderclap Temple was labeled as an unstable faction, and joined the war. After the war, they adopted a method of observation. However, from what I know, although Great Thunderclap Temple also has doubts about the information Taishu Temple provided back then, they have no way of confirming whether Taishu Temple knew about Yuhuang Heaven Sea's pregnancy. And they don't seem to have realized that their attempt to pass on Buddhist teachings to purify the demon race has incurred the enmity of Taishu Temple. After the war between the two worlds, they continued. Golden Cicada should be the greatest result in the end. The reason why Taishu Temple tacitly agreed to the war of vanquishing Buddhism in the past is very likely because they've reclassified Great Thunderclap Temple as an unfavorable faction. However, at that time, I've already transcended the tribulation and reincarnated. I don't know the specifics, but there shouldn't be any mistake. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed. No matter what, this is truly a great move. It's true that they're capable. It's truly not easy to make Yuhuang Heaven Sea follow their commands. The Divine Land has always been publicly acknowledged as the #1 sacred ground of the human race. No matter how I personally feel about them, at the very least, from the results, Taishu Temple is indeed deserving of its reputation. Miao Shihao spoke silently. Taishu Temple has done a special analysis and organized all the information they could gather regarding Yuhuang Heaven Sea. In the end, they came to the conclusion that this demon's only weakness is his wife, Yuhuang Heaven Sea. Although Yuhuang Heaven Sea is also a powerful greater demon, when she's together with Yuhuang Heaven Sea, she becomes Yuhuang Heaven Sea's only weakness. Because when she's in trouble, Yuhuang Heaven Sea will lose its cool. Using emotionlessness to calculate emotions. Starting from Yan Xinghe, Taishu Temple has always been like this. Their continuous successes have only strengthened their conviction. Chapter 11:16. Miao Shihao looked around. Aren't Jian Sangtian and Yin Xiantian here? They should have their suspicions too, but they couldn't verify it. Yu Juntian had joined the Taishu Temple for many years. Perhaps he had the intention to verify his suspicions in the past. It's a pity that the Taishu Temple didn't trust him. After so many years, they didn't plan on investing enough resources to let him return to the Mahayana level. Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao. Oh, from what you're saying, Shihao, the ancient heavenly gate was also seen as an unstable or disadvantageous force by the Taishu Temple in the past? Miao Shihao's lips curled into a cold smile. The ancient heavenly gate was the origin of the concept of an unstable force. It was also the first super sect that the Taishu Temple had deemed as an unstable force. During the war between the two worlds, the Taishu Temple's extreme conservatives were in power. Their enmity towards the Great Thunderclap Temple stemmed from their attempt to impart Buddhism to the demon race. However, it wasn't the same for the Heavenly Gate in the last years of the ancient times. During that era, the Taishu Temple was at its lowest point, while the Heavenly Gate rose up strongly in the fight against the ruthless emperor's tyranny. In the end, they led the heroes of the Divine Land to overthrow the ruthless emperor. Although the Taishu Temple also participated in the final battle and played an important role, even using the Haotian mirror, causing the already incomplete Haotian mirror to be damaged again. However, although the Heavenly Gate gradually recovered its strength, it caused its prestige to decline. Miao Shihao shook his head. Back then, if the Heavenly Gate's prestige continued to develop, it would vaguely start to surpass the Taishu Temple. This hurt many people in the Taishu Temple. It was then that Jihuang Xinyuan reappeared and unified the infinite wilderness continent. A new war between the two worlds was about to break out. Miao Shihao said slowly, the Temple Master of Taishu Temple, the fourth Temple Master, Dao Master Changyun, made a decision that many Taishu cultivators thought was the best of both worlds. However, many other Taishu Temple cultivators didn't like it. This decision was very controversial at the time. In the years that followed, it had a profound and important impact on the entire Taishu Temple. Miao Shihao's gaze was deep and serene. In terms of cultivation and strength, not to mention the Taishu Taoist, Wen Qiyang, and Tai Daoist Lord, among all the experts of the Taishu Temple, Dao Master Changyun is probably not even in the top 10. However, the influence he has caused is very important. Lin Feng said calmly, design the heavenly gates. Miao Shihao nodded and said, on the one hand, he's the founder of the radical conservative ideology of the Taishu Temple. On the other hand, starting from him, Taishu Temple took the initiative to plot against the other super forces in the Divine Land to buy time for Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror. Actually, there were precedents before this. Miao Shihao recalled and said, the earliest origin of this line of thought, in fact, originated from Lord Scarlet Sunday. However, the difference is that Dao Master Scarlet Sun sacrificed himself to buy a chance to kill Jihuang Xinyuan for Yan Xinghe, the Haotian Mirror, and Xia Fangyu. Previously, he was also the one who held up the sky and guarded the Divine Land. Most of the time, he paid the price of getting injured to buy time for the Haotian Mirror to recover. If he could avoid using the Haotian Mirror, he would try his best not to delay the recovery of the Haotian essence. Miao Shihao continued, however, after that, the situation gradually began to change. In the battle to depose the king of the underworld, Yan Xinghe died, and the Haotian Mirror was also severely damaged after killing the king of the underworld. It was far from being perfect. The successor, the third generation of Taishu Temple's Temple Master, Du Yunj, joined forces with the ancient emperor. After a long discussion with the ancient emperor, they came to an agreement. The ancient emperor would temporarily bear the pressure from Tianhuang mainland and buy time for Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror to recuperate. Lin Feng listened quietly and did not interrupt. Miao Shihao continued, in the end, although the Haotian Mirror still could not recover to its peak, it recovered a lot of its power. In the war between the two worlds, although Du Yunj died, it still joined forces with the ancient emperor to kill the Saint Emperor of the Demon Clan. However, after that, the ancient emperor was seriously injured and killed by the ruthless emperor. The ruthless emperor began to wreak havoc in the Divine Land. Dao Master Changyun, who took over as the fourth generation's temple master, finally chose to defend White Cloud Mountain. Taishu Temple was almost sealed off. That could be said to be the most low-key and humiliating period in the entire history of the Taishu Temple. However, in Dao Master Changyun's opinion, it was a wise decision to endure the humiliation for a while in exchange for time for the Haotian Mirror to recover and finally join forces with the Heavenly Gate to kill the ruthless emperor. Miao Shihao's voice was a little faint. Daoist Master Scarlet Sun sacrificed himself to fight the extreme emperor's divine abyss. If not for Emperor Xia's selfishness, the extreme emperor's divine abyss would not have survived. Buying time with the ancient emperor, waiting for the Haotian Mirror to recover its power and kill the demon emperor at that time, winning the war between the two worlds. Temporarily sealing off the mountain and letting the other forces in the Divine Land bear the pressure from the ruthless emperor, waiting for the Haotian Mirror to recover its power and finally kill the ruthless emperor. These successful experiences in the eyes of Tao Master Changyun and some other cultivators of the Taishu Temple finally prompted them to make a further decision, a decision that was undoubtedly the right one. Lin Feng said lightly, "As long as the result is good, the process doesn't matter. As long as the final benefit is greater than the previous sacrifice, then the sacrifice is worth it." However, from self-sacrifice, to actively negotiating with others, to doing things on their own, to ignoring others' opinions, and finally to actively planning and sacrificing others. As for whether others are willing to be sacrificed, and whether they can bear the price of the sacrifice, it is not within their consideration. As for who should be sacrificed, and who should not be sacrificed, it is up to them. Miao Shihao said, "The Tao of the Heavenly Gate seeks to use one's own Tao to bear the weight of all Taos in the world. One Tao gives birth to all Taos, and one Tao gives birth to all Taos. They also dabble in many Taos of the demon clan, and they even try to raise many demon clans. At the same time, they contact some demon clans that do not participate in the war between the two worlds, such as the Phoenix clan and the Divine Wudong clan. And because of their strong rise, Heaven Emperor Kong and the Heavenly Gate were originally feared by the Taishu Temple. Naturally, they became even more hostile to the Taishu Temple. The concept of an unstable force was born for the first time. After the ruthless emperor was deposed, the war between the two worlds broke out soon after. Jihuang Xinyuan returned to the Divine Land, and his first target was the White Cloud Mountain that caused him to return in failure in the past. Miao Shihao had a slightly mocking look on his face. And the Taishu Temple's response was to put up an all-out defense, and at the same time, they only did one small thing. Lin Feng looked at him, and Miao Shihao continued, "During the war between the two worlds, amidst the chaos, they found an opportunity to lure Heaven Emperor Kong's daughter and Jihuang Xinyuan's son together. In the end, Heaven Emperor Kong's only daughter died at the hands of Jihuang Xinyuan's son, Shengtian Lingyi. Although Heaven Emperor Kong, who received the news, rushed over at top speed, it was a pity that he was still a step too late. In the end, Heaven Emperor Kong killed Shengtian Lingyi, and this led to a battle to the death with Jihuang Xinyuan. In the end, both sides fought a bloody battle. The Heavenly Gate was destroyed, and Heaven Emperor Kong perished. Even the primordial ancient star ocean's domain passageway was affected and shattered, splitting into 6. Miao Shihao shook his head. At that time, the Heavenly Gate was said to have reached its peak, but it was actually still in a stage of rapid development. In the future, there was hope for it to reach even greater heights. However, after that battle, it almost disappeared. On the other hand, the Void Temple didn't suffer too much of a blow in that war between two worlds. Moreover, after entering the Middle Era, it successfully passed through its greatest trough in history, beginning to once again recover its former glory. Miao Shihao sighed. During the last years of the primordial ancient era and the beginning of the Middle Era, there was actually a lot of controversy regarding Tao Lord Changyun's actions within the Taishu Temple, but Lin Feng's expression was calm as he continued. However, following the Middle Era, the Haotian mirror finally regained its full potential and assisted Wen Qiang in killing Jihuang Xinyuan. More and more people began to feel that Tao Lord Changyun's choice back then was the right one. Miao Shihao nodded. Although, if Tao Lord Red Sun had not returned to the Divine Land with the power of the Netherworld Sea, the final outcome would have been different, and Jihuang Xinyuan might have broken through the White Cloud Mountain. However, more and more people within the Taishu Temple began to feel that no matter what, Tao Lord Changyun had preserved vitality and hope for the Taishu Temple and the Divine Land. Therefore, before that, perhaps the method of identifying unstable forces and disadvantageous forces and trying to throw them into the war between the two worlds to deplete the demon clan's power was still controversial and had not become the norm. However, after that, this became the usual practice of the Taishu Temple. There was no exception in every war between the two worlds. If unstable forces were depleted in the war between the two worlds, there would naturally be no need to continue observing them after the war. For example, the ancient Heavenly Gate. If unstable forces were not depleted in the war between the two worlds, then they would continue observing them after the war. For example, the Great Tempest Temple after the war in the Upper Realm. If unfavorable forces could be eliminated as soon as possible and not affect the war between the two worlds, then they would be eliminated directly. For example, the current king of the underworld and the underworld hall, as well as some demonic sects from the Middle Ages, and possibly the Great Tempest Temple in recent years. If unfavorable forces could not be eliminated temporarily, then they would also try to throw them into the war between the two worlds to deplete the demon clan's power. After the war, they would be eliminated while they were weak. For example, the number one sacred ground of the demonic path in the Middle Ages, the primordial devil cult. Miao Shihao continued, during the Middle Ages, the Yuhuang heavenly sea began to rise. Although it had yet to reach its peak, it had already displayed a terrifying might. And the Haotian mirror was once again severely damaged in the battle to kill Jihuang Xinyuan. Hence, during the war between the two worlds, the primordial devil cult was schemed against by the Taishu Temple. In the end, the primordial devil lord Jiang Zhaoyang died in battle. The primordial devil cult's legacy treasure, the primordial golden ship of fortune, was completely destroyed. Many experts of the primordial devil cult also died in battle. Unfortunately, the Taishu Temple did not expect that the primordial devil cult's supreme divine ability, the primordial heart demon dispel curse, was truly profound and unfathomable. Jiang Zhaoyang was actually reborn. Although his vitality was greatly damaged, he was still the number one expert of the human race in the divine land. In the end, during the decisive battle that ended the Middle Ages, the Taishu Temple had no choice but to use the Haotian mirror. They used all their strength to kill Jiang Zhaoyang. The Haotian mirror, which had not recovered to its peak, had its recovery time greatly extended. It only recovered to its peak not long before the war between the two worlds in the modern era. Miao Shihao continued, if it wasn't for the fact that the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea's backyard was also on fire in the Tianhuang wasteland continent in the early years of the modern era, the Zhenhou clan and some other demon races challenged the authority of the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea under the leadership of the Zhenhou clan's leader, Bolin Wangtian. The Yuhuang Heavenly Sea would have immediately set foot in the divine land and history would have been rewritten. After listening, Lin Feng nodded slightly. His eyes were slightly closed, and there was a faint cold glint in them. Shihao, you just said that I, Xianmen Tianzong, might have been determined by the Taishu Temple to be an unstable force or even an unfavorable one? Chapter 11:17. Miao Shihao said, perhaps not to the extent of being an unfavorable force, but the possibility of you and our sect being classified as an unstable force is very high. After the battle on Mount Shu, your heaven-punishing sword was completely completed. Before the Haotian mirror recovered, it already had the ability to stand up to the current Taishu Temple. Although the Haotian mirror is still recovering, you have sealed the heaven-punishing sword again. If you succeed in refining the sword for the second time, the future situation will still not be under Taishu Temple's control. Under such circumstances, among the four factions within Taishu Temple, the radical faction, and even the neutral faction will be hostile to you and our sect. The overall policy of Taishu Temple will inevitably change, and the extreme faction can only remain silent. Miao Shihao shook his head. After the ancient Heavenly Gate, some relatively weaker sects were classified as unstable forces. In fact, most of them were led by the extreme faction, and the other factions were just pushing them along. As for the ancient Heavenly Gate and the primitive devil cult, they were classified as unstable forces or even unfavorable forces. To a large extent, it was because they threatened the status of Taishu Temple and received the hostility of the radical faction of Taishu Temple. At the same time, they also attracted the suspicion of the extreme faction of Taishu Temple due to certain reasons. One of the more special ones is the Great Thunderclap Temple. In terms of historical development, the Great Thunderclap Temple has actually been slowly going downhill. However, this is a powerful force that is not aggressive enough and has more than enough to defend. The inheritance that the Buddha and the top 10 disciples left behind for their descendants is too rich. At this point, Miao Shihao tapped his finger on the branch of the mysterious sky treasure tree beside him. Their action of trying to impart Buddhism to the demon race has angered the extreme faction. However, the radical faction of Taishu Temple doesn't like the Great Thunderclap Temple either. This is because the spread of Buddhism's orthodoxy has too great of an influence in the secular world. It even exceeds the combined power of the other sects, including Taishu Temple. For the common people, the Taishu Temple is too ethereal. It's not as easy to accept as the incense burning in the temples that can be seen everywhere. Miao Shihao said indifferently, what happened to the Shu Mountain Sword sect back then had nothing to do with Taishu Temple. It was the greed of the Shu Mountain disciples that led to the red smelting fire copper mine at the foot of the Zhu Yan tribe's mountain. In the end, they were killed by the Zhu Yan tribe. Sword forefather Ren Changmei was used to protecting his own and used the immortal heaven sword to kill the Zhu Yan great sage. He thought that Jihuang Xinyuan would focus on White Cloud Mountain. In the end, Jihuang Xinyuan went to trample on his Shushan Mountain gate in the blink of an eye. For a long time, the Shu Mountain Sword sect has been seen by Taishu Temple as a force that is beneficial to the war between the two worlds. However, that is not because the Shu Mountain Sword sect has a good relationship with Taishu Temple. It is only because it cannot threaten Taishu Temple, so it will not be seen as an enemy by the radical experts of Taishu Temple. At the same time, it has not done anything to provoke the extreme conservatives. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng. I'm not sure how the extreme conservatives view you and our sect within Taishu Temple, but the radical conservatives, and the neutral conservatives will definitely be hostile to you and our sect, and it should be quite strong. During the war between the two worlds more than 4,000 years ago, not only did the Grand One Lord's personal authority play a decisive role, but the extreme conservatives within Taishu Temple also had an advantage in terms of numbers. However, after that war, the strength of the extreme conservatives has greatly declined, be it in terms of quality or quantity. Now, as long as the other three sects reach a consensus, the extreme conservatives, including the Grand One Lord, can only remain silent. Under such circumstances, you and our sect will most likely be seen as an unstable force, and Taishu Temple will find a way to throw you into the next war between the two worlds to wear you down. If we are seen as an unfavorable force, then after the war between the two worlds, if our sect suffers too many losses, we will face a follow-up attack from Taishu Temple. Slowly, Lin Feng nodded, his right index finger lightly touching the space between his eyebrows. Little E, where are you now? In the battlefield of the void, it was very inconvenient to use transcendence energy to transmit sound. It was difficult to communicate with ordinary people, and communication with the outside world was almost cut off. However, Zhu Yi had the Permitha Golden Bridge with him, which allowed him to communicate with Lin Feng on Jade Capital Mountain. Master, the other party has escaped to Infinite Wasteland, and we have also escaped from the battlefield of the void. Here in Infinite Wasteland, we have escaped from the complicated environment of the battlefield of the void. As long as we are not blocked by big demons, we will be able to catch up to them very soon. Zhu Yi's voice sounded in Lin Feng's mind. Lin Feng was expressionless. Are the others with you? Zhu Yi answered, yes, third junior brother, sixth junior brother, and little junior brother are all with me. Lin Feng continued to ask, are you sure that Tianhao's parents are in the hands of the person you are chasing? Yes. Zhu Yi answered with certainty. After a short pause, he asked, Master, is there a problem? Lin Feng said calmly, there is something fishy about this, be careful not to fall into an ambush. But we must save Tianhao's parents, so you can continue to chase after them. As he said that, Lin Feng's God of War clone stood up from the mysterious Sky Treasure Tree's branch. At the same time, the door of the scripture repository was pushed open, and Lin Feng and Brontosaurus clone walked out. Go after them, I will go and meet up with you now. Zhu Yi answered, I understand. On Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng looked at Miao Shihao. Shihao, I have to thank you this time. You came out of seclusion just in time. Miao Shihao smiled, and his cold demeanor that was as melancholic as the moon suddenly changed, returning to his previous charming demeanor. He glanced at Lin Feng and said, Sect Master, you are treating me like an outsider. Who are we? But unlike in the past, this time, the charming demeanor disappeared in the blink of an eye, returning to the elegant and ethereal temperament that was like the moon in the void. Lin Feng's expression did not change, and he said lightly, when true is false, false is true, and when false is true, true is false. Apart from the parties involved, it is indeed difficult to see through what is true and what is false. Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone, Wang Lin's devil clone, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, and Luo Qinggu all came to Lin Feng. Master. Lin Feng's god of war clone said, go down the mountain with Monk Dade, Taoist Master Lai Ri, and Taoist Master Liubua to reorganize the disciples' families in the Xiantian realm, Cloud Peak, Cloud Mirror City, and Sandbank City. Make proper arrangements and do things according to the rules. Zhu Yi and the others were shocked. Lin Feng's orders were clearly to prepare for war. Perhaps it might not happen, but they had to be prepared in advance. Wang Lin looked at Lin Feng. Master, could it be the war between the two realms? But it seems that there are no signs of it happening. Lin Feng glanced at Miao Shihao. Let Shihao explain everything to you in detail. With that, Lin Feng flicked his transcendence energy, and his god of war clone, Zhu Yi, Miao Shihao, and the others were sent down Mount Yujing. Brontosaurus's clone turned into a silver stream of light and disappeared into the top of Lin Feng's head. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. Mount Yujing beneath his feet suddenly shook, and the dense branches of the mysterious heaven treasure tree at the top of the mountain began to tremble. The branches and leaves seemed to extend into the endless void. It had better not be what I expected. Lin Feng's main body also left Mount Yujing, but he did not break through the void to return to the vast thousand domains. Instead, his entire body expanded, and in the endless void beyond the heavens, he seemed to turn into an incalculable giant. The huge Mount Yujing flashed with unpredictable light in the void above Lin Feng's head. Clouds of purple aura spread out, shrouding the mountain peak and the treasure tree. It floated above Lin Feng's head like a purple auspicious cloud. As his robe sleeves fluttered, Lin Feng strode forward in the void, covering countless miles with each step. At this moment, on Tianhuang mainland, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, Li Yuanfang, and the others were traveling quickly. Their expressions were somewhat gloomy. Could it be because of this? Shi Tianhao asked slowly. There was no joy or anger on his face, but he was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Wang Lin said coldly, it's very likely. Now that I think about it, it's a bit of a coincidence. Shi Tianhao's voice was even colder than Wang Lin's. I just want to know where my parents have been all these years. Have they already fallen into the hands of the Taishu Temple, or has the Taishu Temple only known of their whereabouts and only told the people of the Underworld Hall now? Zhu Yi looked ahead. The Haotian mirror might be able to find people in the void battlefield, but it should be expensive. If we can't ensure that your parents are always in the same place, I'm afraid it's unrealistic to search frequently and everywhere. Zhu Yi's expression did not change. He said slowly, I didn't notice it before, but now that I've been reminded by Master, I've paid special attention to it. I can vaguely feel that someone is interfering with our tracking. They don't want us to lose track of them, but they also don't want us to catch up to them quickly. They seem to be deliberately controlling the distance between us and them, or... Zhu Yi frowned slightly. To ensure that they can escape to a certain location. Above his head, an extremely huge tortoise light projection floated. Hundreds of millions of light patterns and talismans on the shell of the tortoise were constantly being destroyed and born, then forming one combination after another, continuously deducing. The giant tortoise's eyes were indifferent and calm, like the vast and deep sea. It looked forward and shot out two dark blue rays of light, pointing straight to the distant sky. Everyone followed the light all the way forward. Suddenly, the hearts of Zhu Yi and the others moved slightly. They looked carefully and saw through the void, and they could see a figure. It was a middle-aged man in a green robe. He was at the Void Return Realm. His usually calm face revealed a rare look of panic and embarrassment at this moment. It was King Chujiang, the sub-hall master of the Underworld Hall whom Wang Lin had met once in the past. He was one of the 10 Yama kings of the Underworld Hall. At this moment, King Chujiang's hands kept changing hand seals. Wave after wave of magic power was sent out and landed on the ground beneath his feet. A huge spell formation was gradually taking shape. This spell formation was quite strange. It was not the spell formation that was currently circulating. Instead, it was more like an ancient spell formation born from heaven and earth. Chapter 11:18. There were thousands of heavenly Tao, and under the changes of the oceans, some formations would be born naturally and hide the spirit chi of heaven and earth. They were complicated and mysterious. Those ancient formations were different from the ones passed down by the human race or the demon race. When the various races first studied formations, they were actually inspired by those ancient formations and gradually evolved into what they were now. Due to the frequent collisions between the human race and the demon race, there were extremely few ancient formations that were born naturally in heaven and earth now. For example, a complete and gigantic ancient formation like the one on Immortal Mountain in the Ying Ocean was already extremely rare. If there were still ancient formations that existed now, they would either be specially protected and preserved by someone, or they would have a concealment effect. Usually, they would be hidden among everything in the world and would not be activated, as though they did not exist. Therefore, they would not be discovered. At that moment, a natural ancient formation appeared in front of Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others. Furthermore, it was an extremely massive and complicated ancient formation that contained endless mysteries. Different from normal formations, what appeared before everyone was not profound and complicated formation patterns and diagrams. Instead, it was densely packed light spots that resembled stars in the sky. From afar, they looked as fine as corn, but in reality, each light spot was a huge ball of light that was about an acre in size. The balls of light guided the mountains, rivers, and even the grass and trees of vast Tianhuang mainland. Every mountain, every river, every plain, and every hill was drawn into the formation. The rocks on the mountains, the water droplets in the rivers, the grass and trees on the plains, the soil on the hills, as well as all the flowers, birds, fish and insects, living beings and lifeless soil, all of them corresponded to the gigantic balls of light in the world. Even the invisible wind in the sky, the drifting clouds and the rays of sunlight that shone down from the sky were guided by the formation. Li Yuanfang looked at the scene in front of him and frowned. This formation, Zhu Yi said in a deep voice, this formation has the effect of teleportation, and the effect is probably extremely powerful. If its power is pushed to its limits, it can instantly traverse the endless void. However, it will extract all the spirit chi in the world in front of it. However, the mountains and rivers in front of us will all disappear. If that's the case, not only will he instantly escape from us, we'll also lose the clues to continue chasing after him. The few of them communicated with their spiritual wills. In an instant, countless thoughts and information were transmitted. Wang Lin asked, "Can we stop this formation?" Li Yuanfang shook his head. "We're a step too slow. The formation is already at its final moment. We can only enter it if we want to break it. The formation can't be interfered with inside. Furthermore, ancient formations are far more primitive and complicated than current formations. It will take some time to stop it after entering the formation." Zhu Yi said, "Junior brother's parents are in the hands of King Chujiang. We can't use external force to destroy the formation, or else the people inside will not be spared. Otherwise, the people inside will not be spared." Shi Tianhao was expressionless. Did this King Chujiang seek refuge with Taishu Temple, or did Taishu Temple guide him through other methods? If they had not received Lin Feng's message and learned of Taishu Temple's usual practice from Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone and Wang Lin's great demon clone from Miao Shihao, Shi Tianhao and the others might have thought that this was a trick set up by the King of the Underworld and the Underworld Hall. It was even to the extent that King Chujiang's fortune was as great as the heavens, and he actually unintentionally discovered this ancient formation that was normally concealed, allowing him to escape alive. Even though this probability was extremely small, it wasn't completely impossible. The King of the Underworld and the Underworld Hall had just suffered a great loss and did not dare to show themselves for a while. Even if there was such a huge ancient formation, the purpose of using it would only be to escape and stop Shi Tianhao and the others from chasing after them. At most, they would still kidnap Shi Tianhao's parents and take them away for future use. These possibilities still existed, but after receiving the warning from Lin Feng and Miao Shihao, Shi Tianhao and the others had no choice but to be more vigilant. Especially after paying attention, they had gradually discovered some suspicious points. Wang Lin said, one of the 10 infernal kings, King Dushi, has fallen into the hands of Taishu Temple. Although the Underworld Hall has made changes to many communication methods to prevent Taishu Temple from following the clues, it is still impossible to completely avoid it. The whereabouts of King Chujiang may have been discovered by them through this method. This guy has been chased by us to the end of his rope. As long as there is a straw to clutch at, he will tightly grasp it. Even if he has some doubts, he can only wait until he escapes from our hands first. Under such circumstances, it is not difficult for the Taishu Temple to secretly help him and give him some guidance without revealing the secret of his identity. Wang Lin glanced at Zhu Yi. Especially in the case of the top experts of Taishu Temple taking action, it is even easier. It was not easy to hide from him, Zhu Yi, and Shi Tianhao, especially when Zhu Yi had the golden Permitha bridge with him. Before receiving Lin Feng's warning, they almost did not notice it. To achieve this, even among the high-level experts of Taishu Temple, only the 4 great void elders could do it, and even some special methods were needed to assist them. This formation has a transmission function. If we want to interrupt it, we must enter the formation ourselves. Zhu Yi's eyes flickered. He looked at Shi Tianhao and Li Yuanfang and said, 3rd junior brother and I will enter the formation, little junior brother and 6th junior brother will stay outside. If there is really a mishap, 3rd junior brother and I will use the 2 realms void technique to replace our clones and try to help our main body escape. Shi Tianhao said decisively, if this formation really works, 2nd senior brother and you may not be able to use the 2 realms void technique to replace your main body in the chaos of the void, especially since it is difficult to determine the destination of the transmission. If it is really as Mr. Miao said, that Taishu Temple is scheming against us, then the most likely place is the mysterious sea that is occupied by the Dragon Clan. The situation in the mysterious sea is unknown, and I am also not sure if the 2 realms void technique will work. I can't let the 2 of you take risks for me. Capturing King Chujiang is not difficult. I will go by myself. With 2nd senior brother and the Permitha bridge outside, it will be more convenient to receive me. After saying that, Shi Tianhao directly stepped through the void and walked towards the ancient formation. Suddenly, he saw a ray of golden light that blocked him outside the formation. The magnificent golden bridge that was like a rainbow had already extended into the ancient formation. Shi Tianhao looked up and saw that Zhu Yi's figure had already disappeared into the ancient formation. Zhu Yi's calm voice sounded beside his ear, little junior brother, don't worry. I will definitely rescue your family safely. I also want to see what methods Taishu Temple or the King of the Underworld have. Beside Zhu Yi, Wang Lin walked side by side with him. His white hair fluttered behind him, and he did not say a word. He was like a towering mountain that could move and was silent. He walked into the ancient formation together with Zhu Yi. On the magnificent Permitha bridge, rays of golden light spun like falling petals. It was as if flowers were falling from the sky, and it was a magnificent scene. Zhu Yi stepped onto the golden bridge and kept changing his hand seals. The golden light of the Permitha bridge meditated and immediately stopped the huge ancient formation that was about to be activated. The countless light balls that were constantly moving up and down between heaven and earth suddenly stopped in midair. The various things that they were pulling also stopped. The dust seemed to be floating in the air, and it could be seen clearly in an instant. The entire void seemed to have frozen, and even time seemed to have stopped at this moment. King Chujiang, who was in the formation, suddenly stopped as if he had become a clay puppet. Not only could he not move, but even his thoughts had also stopped. Wang Lin's expression was indifferent. He directly stretched out his hand and grabbed at King Chujiang. It seemed like an extremely ordinary action, but it grasped the void, and King Chujiang's entire body seemed to be in his hand. However, at this moment, the entire formation shook violently. Everything in the world recovered their vitality, and the countless light balls started to move again. Not only that, but all the light balls started to expand continuously as if they were going to connect together. The endless light seemed to be about to devour the heaven and earth that the huge ancient formation enveloped. Zhu Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. The power of the Permitha bridge surged violently, and the spreading light gradually stopped. However, the entire formation seemed to have fallen into a berserk state, and it was about to be completely detonated. The entire huge ancient formation seemed like it was about to explode. As expected, it's a trap. Someone is purposely controlling the formation to push it beyond its limits so that it won't affect the final teleportation. However, after the teleportation ends, the formation will also disappear. Zhu Yi had already understood the various changes in the blink of an eye. The person controlling it has a high cultivation level, and his control is also meticulous. He's actually still borrowing the power of the formation to restrain the Permitha bridge. Waves of mysterious and majestic power surged in the formation, cancelling out the power of Zhu Yi's Permitha bridge. At the same time that the formation went completely berserk, it was also preventing Zhu Yi from controlling the Permitha bridge to leave the ancient formation. Through the contest of power in the formation, even Zhu Yi and Wang Lin could only sense that the other party was a powerhouse in the last day's realm. However, they could not clearly see the path of the other party's magical power. If they really had to say, it was faintly similar to the orthodoxy of the king of the underworld. However, it was specious, and it was difficult to be sure. Zhu Yi's expression was calm and did not show any signs of panic. You dare to do it, but you don't dare to admit it? He gently patted the surface of the Permitha bridge with his palm. The mighty golden light instantly became even more magnificent. It carried Zhu Yi and Wang Lin, who had captured King Chujiang, and rushed out of the formation together. The entire ancient formation was almost penetrated by the surging momentum. In the void, 3 figures stood there. The one in the lead was Tao Master Qing Yi, while Yun Yuanzhen and Xianlin Taoist stood behind her. Xianlin Taoist frowned slightly. If Zhu Yi did not have the treasure of creation with him, this operation would not have been difficult. However, now martial Uncle Qing Yi, you might be discovered. If Zhu Yi and the others don't die this time, it will be a disaster in the future. It doesn't matter. It's fine if we don't want to be exposed, but we need the Haotian mirror to do more. Although it's troublesome, it's still within our expectations. Tao Master Qing Yi's expression was cold and did not change at all. A hazy mirror light shrouded his whole body above his head. Tao Master Qing Yi's hands changed incantations, and the hazy mirror light above his head became brighter. However, there was a hint of worry in Tao Master Qing Yi's eyes. Yun Yuanzhen looked at her. Master? Tao Master Qing Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. I feel a little uneasy. It seems that something unexpected has happened.